Ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs, for those of you who have forgotten about COVID, I will never let you forget. And in response to all those, playing a clip of Todd Blanche talking about needing ID to eat at clubs and restaurants. This is a retweet from one Franklin Leonard with a response that says, "Where are y'all eating where you have to show ID to walk into a restaurant?" Here's the clip.
Is that there's a lot of things that we can be doing, like voter ID. Like every time you walk into a restaurant or a club, you have to show your ID. How about you have to show your ID to vote? That's not anything that's crazy, and that's what we should be talking about.
Certainly one of the votes on Capitol Hill right now.
Where are you all? By the way, go to X and see the amount of handles that are posting out. Melanie Darigo, every Democrat, leftist, obtuse idiot out there pretending not to understand things is tweeting out, "Where do you all eat where you have to show ID?" First of all, even if you take Todd Blanche at his word, what he said was restaurants and clubs. And there's no club that you get into without showing ID to prove that you are 18, unless you're a geriatric and they don't care to ask you for ID. But then they don't even let you in because you don't attract the hotties, because that's what goes on at clubs, from what I understand.
Is that there's a lot of things that we can be doing, like voter ID. Like every time you walk into a restaurant or a club, you have to show your ID.
How about a restaurant or a club? Anyhow, Franklin Leonard, Melanie Darigo, every other Democrat buffoon out there who pretends not to understand says, "Where are you all eating?" To which I say, New York, next question. Here's a clip, a headline. What year is it from? It was definitely from COVID eras. New York Times, I clipped off the date. New York City will require workers and customers show proof of at least one dose for indoor dining and other activities. Quote, "If you want to participate in our society fully, you've got to be vaccinated," end quote. Mayor Bill de Blasio said, quote, "It's time." Now, some of you out there, because I can think like a scoundrel, I used to be a lawyer after all. Some of you out there are going to say, "Viva, that's not the case anymore. That was during COVID when there was an emergency, and they needed to make sure that I don't know why I just turned into Bernie Sanders or Howard Stern's father. "You need to make sure that you are vaccinated to protect others with a shot that protected from neither infection nor transmission. They need to make sure it was an emergency." You know what else is an emergency? Federal elections is an emergency. And if you can bend the rules, you stupid jackasses, to require photo ID to eat at a restaurant or get a cup of coffee during COVID because emergency, you can damn well make that same argument for federal elections. If it wasn't racist to say, "Hey, sir, you must show ID to get in here to prove that you're vaccinated." By the way, if you want to make an argument for what was racist, that was racist. You want to talk about disparate impact on racial minorities, blacks, for example, Latinos, Native Americans. Requiring people show proof of ID, proof of vaccination to get into restaurants disproportionately impacted blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. So you want to talk about actual racist policy if you want to go there. That was one of them. Suggesting that blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, or ethnic minorities can't get ID, government-issued ID, in order to show it to vote. You're the racist yet again. What was the other fun one I was having on Twitter the other day? Oh, these people coming out and saying Trump referring to people as low IQ is evidence of racism. And it's quite astonishing. Let me just bring this up real quick, because this was the other talking point. The people who are fundamentally and inherently racists come out and accuse everybody else of being racist. The people who say it's racist to ask for photo ID to vote are the same ones who implemented a racist policy to require photo ID, proof of vaccination, which would disparately impact racial minorities who were statistically less likely to get the shot. Why? Because the government has statistically and historically tested on those very demographics of people. Black Americans, Tuskegee experiments, Native Americans. So who am I bringing up here? I'm bringing up, what's his name? What is my dog eating? What are you eating? What are you eating? Are you crazy? Sorry. Dog was eating something. This man comes up and says, Andrew Weinstein, the pattern is unmistakable and repulsive. If you keep calling black leaders low IQ, my goodness, first of all, I'm not sure. I don't want to say Hakeem Jeffries is mixed race. I think he is. To call him a leader. Sorry, let me get serious here. The pattern is unmistakable and repulsive. If you keep calling black leaders, quote, low IQ, end quote, you aren't expressing a political disagreement. You are using a racist dog whistle to undermine their humanity. Every single time Donald Trump uses this slur, he shows the country that his politics are built entirely on grievance and bigotry. It's a disgrace to the office and a stain on this country. By the way, They're talking about racist dog whistles, the people who are now throwing around 8647 because they think it's effing funny. To which I had to say to Andrew Weinstein, I didn't realize Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene were black. If I call you low IQ, does that make me an anti-Semite? The amount of white people that Donald Trump has called low IQ. You got Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You had Alex Jones, without a doubt, and everyone else in that tweet. The idea that these people come out and then say that Trump using a slur on a black person, the same one that he uses on every other white person out there, but it's racist when he does it to a black person and they ignore it when it comes to a white person. Andrew Weinstein, you are low IQ yourself, good sir. Does that make me an anti-Semite? Bada bing, bada boom. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Sunday night. It's time for Viva and Barnes Law for the People. The bestest Sunday night show out there. Let me make sure that we're live across all platforms. We look like we are, and we are. The Sunday night show is streamed across ComeyTube, which has now gone full AI. I call it censorship mode. It's AI censorship, as in AI is now censoring, demonetizing a swath of otherwise legitimate human accounts because AI is stupid, and YouTube, ComeyTube, has gone full AI slop. We're live on ComeyTube anyhow. We're live on X. We're live on Rumble, the free speech platform, and we are live on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Now, I'm going to ask you all a question. The lighting tonight, does it look different? Because I've done something to diffuse the headlight above me so that it's light and I don't have to turn off the headlight, and that it's not blaring and making my forehead look like the surface of the moon. Just so everybody understands what I've done here, because this is, don't say Viva doesn't know how to fix things. This is a very old painting cloth that I have duct taped to the ceiling in front of the headlight so that it diffuses the light, and you'll notice that it's less dark than last week, and I hope it's sufficiently sharp. We're going to try it like this. You can see, by the way, it gets my hands. The diffuser only works about, up until the part of my computer, and then after that, it looks like it's blown out. So I'll fix it, but I'm going to make it because I think this is a good setup. And so long as it doesn't catch on fire or fall on me during the stream, we should be good. No sponsor for tonight's stream, but before Robert Barnes gets in here, all y'all need to know what's coming up. And we will ask for photo ID. Excuse me. We have our event coming up in August. It's 1776 Law. Well, I say our. It's 1776 Law Center Convention, August 1st and 2nd in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's going to be an amazing thing. Barnes puts out special conference this August with rare in-person appearances by Marcurus, who's Duran coming over from overseas, Christoforu, Duran coming in from overseas, the Duran coming in from overseas, New Sonoff, Larry Johnson. Who do we got here? Daniel Davis, People's Pundit, Viva Fry, and more. Go to 1776lawcenter.com if you want to support them. We're going to have I'm going to try to launch our hot sauce before this event, and it's going to be good. And I'm going to bring down some hot sauce. I'm going to bring down some books. We're going to make it a family trip, and it's going to be amazing. So if you can make it, this is the website. Go to 1776lawcenter.com, and you can come to the event, and it's going to be phenomenal. Now, with that said, people, let's get Robert Barnes in the house, and we're going to get on with today's show, which is going to be a banger. Now, I've stopped. I've forgotten to continue to give the disclaimer. I try to get to every Rumble rant, every ComeyTube super chat, and we do, in fact, get to all the locals. Every now and again, locals tips, every now and again, I miss one. And if you're going to be miffed, rooked, shilled, you're going to feel bad. You're going to cry that we didn't read your comment out loud if we don't get to it. I miss them every now and again. And if you're going to be that sensitive, don't do it, because I don't like people being feeling like they've been shilled, grifted, rooked, whatever the hell you want to call it. We're going to go through all of these in real time. Share the link, spread the word, and let's get Barnes in here. I'm here for the Barnes hate popcorn at the ready. What's funny is at first, they fight you. And then when you prove to be more accurate than not, then they, what is the expression in here? I forget what the expression is. But it's going to be a fun one tonight. I just saw a tip question came in until we get Robert in the house. Let's go over to our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community and actually get to a few of them, because when they come in before the stream, they don't pop up on their side view. We got Chris Kraft in the house who says, for the Robert Barnes was right again jar. I'm excited for tonight's discussion because the Comey indictment and the Candace Owens defamation lawsuit, I'm curious to see if Barnes and I are going to be aligned in our interpretations of these two items. And I am here also to see the Barnes hate in the chat, but people will wise up. When you have to say things like Barnes was good on the impeachments, he was good on COVID, he was good on January 6th, he was good on Supreme Court picks, but he is way off on Iran, you might have to self-reflect and say, maybe, just maybe. We'll see. Then we got Jonathan Toby says, it feels like no matter how much J.D. Vance pushes back on this Iran conflict, we're still on the losing side. We will prevail. We will prevail. We shall overcome. Booma says, Viva Fry. Which senators voted against the farm and food bill after the revision was made to still make the companies making the pesticide liable for injuries? I don't know. It was a bipartisan blowout. It was like 250 to 270 to 150, give or take. I just couldn't get over the overt chicanery in that vote, where Lauren Boebert asked for the vote to remove the immunity for pesticide manufacturers, Monsanto and a bunch of others. And it was quite clearly a yay that won. And then the guy says, the no's win. I'll get there in a second. Gray 101 says, based on Fox News, President Trump have a plan to preemptively neutralize Iranian attack dolphins. This is not satire. Bigfoot says, I'm here for Barnes Ty. And Jonathan Toby says, friend and sponsor of my dad, who's been a counselor therapist for decades and has been around for many forms of dementia, expressed skepticism at the accusation that Trump has frontal lobe dementia, as people with that condition have extremely violent tendencies, Barnes. I don't agree with Barnes on that one either. But it is only the snowflakes who get so offended through disagreement that they have to demonize demonize to the core. By the way, check this out. Let me bring this out here for 1 second. We've got a crypto tipped with Rumble Wallet over, and it's 0.000063 Bitcoin. That's awesome. Actually, let me show this in real time. And I'm going to text Barnes. Did they snatch up Robert? Now you're going to hear some dogs fighting in a second. Come on in, smiley face. Let me show you this. You are going to hear the dogs getting a little angry at each other. So we got tipped via... Shh. Gentlemen, I'm doing a show. I'm going to have to put a dog out. We got Annie P13 tipped via Rumble Wallet. And if anybody is interested in how to do that, you go... Did you hit the... Sorry, hold on. Okay, now that's it. Get out. Let's go. Oh, yeah, you look smelly boy. Get out of here. There you go. You go and you download the Rumble Wallet, and you can invest in crypto if you are so inclined at your own risks and perils. And you click on the tip thing here, the tip, and then you can download it. And then if you want to scan you can scan here, scan the QR code. You can tip with crypto, amazing, or you can tip with XAUT, which is gold back tethered because of Tether. That's how you can do it. Thank you very much. And then we got the only person I bet on to be right more than Barnes is President Trump. An evening with Uncle Ray. Not a bad bet. Now, I wanted to show you something. What was it? It was over on X, and it had to do with a video. Oh, yes, that's right. The vote on the amendment to eliminate immunity from pesticide producers, in particular Monsanto, etc. Listen to this, and I defy you to tell me that the nose beat the eyes. Okay, so this is from the video. The eyes come through loud and clear with a strong response. The nays are nearly silent. Sound indicates the A's won, but the voice vote. But the chair called it for the nays anyway. That's why Rep. Luna immediately requested a recorded vote. Here, listen to this.
All time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Florida. Those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. If any of the chair or the noes have it.
I request yeas and nays.
The gentlewoman requests a recorded vote. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Florida will be postponed.
My understanding is that the procedural postponement is a procedural requirement after someone asks that the vote be recorded, and that they went on to have a recorded vote, and it was a smashing blowout of bipartisan support in favor of eliminating the amendment that would have offered immunity to pesticide producers, including Monsanto. Ow, I just hit the mic. Robert, we're going to do it. You're going to be mini me all night long here. Sorry, no, hold on. Bring it. Sir, how goes the battle?
Good.
Everybody should know, by the way, Robert got a new microphone entirely. The crackling, unless it comes back, is entirely gone. Robert, you got the same mic?
I have no idea. Somebody else got it.
Okay.
So
it looks like the Shure. It is crystal clear.
Yeah, it's a Shure.
Don't touch it, Robert. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. All right, sir. So everything's good?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, we got one hell of a show. You want to outline what we got coming up here, or should I do it?
Yeah, we got the Comey indictment. We've got the first COVID-related indictment, COVID cover-up indictment, you might say. SCOTUS, big First Amendment case on the privacy related to state discovery, an issue that 1776 Law Center has been working on for quite some time. So big win at SCOTUS, which was nice to see. Another big win at SCOTUS, though a little bit maybe belated, which is the Voting Rights Act, as forecast, partially, mostly, kind of struck down. We'll get to that, the racial redistricting and its impact on maybe even the midterms. Defamation in our news and defamation. We always seem to have a new defamation case every week. This week it's against Candace Owens, who's the libel gift that keeps on giving for potential libel lawyers. The FISA law, you just mentioned the Farm Bill, what's in there, what's not in there, thanks to some good work. The FISA law that they snuck in but kind of didn't sneak in, we'll get to that. Certain congressmen held up their ability to try to sneak it through the middle of the night. The Iran war, we've got force majeure. What does that mean in the Iran war context? That's going to be big international litigation around the world. The War Powers Resolution Act, the president says he complies. Critics say he hasn't complied. How does the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty maybe play into it? The OpenAI on trial out in San Francisco. Elon Musk was on the stand. Once again, it's a habit he's getting accustomed to these days. Narcos-style indictment in Mexico. Does it relate to a couple of CIA guys who fell off a road up there just a few months ago or a few weeks ago? Do illegals have a right to bail? Sanctuary DA taken out in Montana. Google has to settle again. This is a big settlement for the impact to be able to access independent apps, the Play Store, because it has an injunction aspect, not just a monetary aspect. Infowars, what exactly is going on there? Is it I had the privilege of being the last guest ever on the Infowars broadcast. The king is dead. Long live the king, because Alex Jones is still back with a new network. We'll get into that. And the most fun case of the week, you got to take a look at these cannons at JP Morgan.
Well, I mean, so I thought I was being ahead of the curve by saying, you sent that to me on Friday. I didn't believe a damn thing about it. I said, before going live, we're going to cover it. I call bullshit on this. Apparently it might have already been debunked, but we'll get into it. Robert, do we start with, let's start with some stuff that's going to make everybody happy, or at least it should. The James Comey indictment. So James Comey this week was finally indicted. It's a damn near a year later, after I thoroughly laid out the blueprint for why he should be charged, why it was not just an innocuous post off a random 8647, that the dude is selling his book at the time. His book is about coded messages that are being used by extremists to target their enemies, their political rivals, and have violence done unto them. Post 1, he's reading his book. Post 2, he writes 8647 or takes a picture of it in the ocean with shells. And then post 3 is a summary of the book that describes exactly what the book is about. In his book, it is felt that the prosecutor prosecuting a far-right extremist feels that he went beyond the protections of First Amendment speech when he singled out his rivals by name, suggested something be done to them, and his fans obliged, injuring and killing his political rivals. That was May 2025. Whatever the hell happened in the last 11 months, it's either nothing or something. People believe that nothing happened, that this is just Kash Patel trying to save his job, Todd Blanche trying to justify, an appointment to Attorney General, that nothing happened over the last 11 months, and they're just doing this now, indicting James Comey after the first failed indictment to please their boss, Donald John Trump. Other people out there might hypothesize that in that 11 months, they might have subpoenaed documents. They might have gotten internal correspondence between James Comey, hypothetically, and some witnesses and some publishers to the effect that this was, in fact, something of a deliberate, call it a campaign to sell his book, which might indicate intent that he knew that it could be perceived as a threat, whatever, and he went along with it anyhow. It's a bare bones 3-page, 2-charge indictment with a civil forfeiture provision, which indicates that there is some correlation to this and the sales of his book. I think it's entirely justified. And in as much as you can't threaten anybody, let alone the president, in a foreign language, nor can you threaten them in code. And then the only question becomes whether or not this was a threat, a meaningful threat, or an unlawful threat, as per whatever the judicial requirements are, and whether or not it's a little bit of a different criteria when it's the former director of the FBI and the president of these United States of America. So I think it's justified. I think it's about bloody time. I feel very vindicated, and I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't think they got inspired by my theory, but they certainly knew about it at the time because Don Jr. had reposted my laying out. This was not just a one-off shells on the beach. It was a 3-post series, and it was quite clear what the intention was. Do you think this indictment is bogus and an affront to freedom of speech in America?
So the indictment's brought in the Eastern District of North Carolina. They were able to avoid Virginia because this is where Comey was located at the time he made the post. And so that gave jurisdiction and venue there. So that was their first effort to be able to circumvent the problems they've run into in the rogue judges and grand juries and prosecutors in Virginia. The 2 charges, 18 U.S.C. 871, Section 8, basically we take our public laws and then they codify them to have them easily accessible for people to read and review. When they're passed, they're not passed in that way. They're passed as public law number 93-475 or something like that. But then the codifiers take them and put them where they think they should be located. Sometimes people get the headings confused. The headings are actually not the law. The law is what's in the text. So you have Section 871 and Section 875, 2 different provisions of Title 18 that are being raised. Under 871, it's when you make any threat to inflict bodily harm on certain select officials, including the President of the United States. You do so willfully. You don't have to put it through mail, but it's intended that it cover the mails. But because it's a federally protected officer, that allows it to be brought as a federal crime. And it's punishable with a maximum sentence of 5 years in federal prison. So the elements are any threat to inflict bodily harm that's made willfully and knowingly. The other one is 875, Section 875, which requires that you commit a threat to commit injury, just injury, through interstate commerce. And note there's much lower prison sentence risk, only 2 years maximum. But notice there, it's just a threat to commit an injury. Given the conflict between the 2 statutes, with one talking about bodily harm and one talking about just injury, you could infer in the other statute that it's any injury, economic, social, political, whatever, just any injury, reputational injury, etc. The question is, how broad does it reach? So that will be partially adjudicated here. Now here's the jury instructions. Folks can look them up themselves. The Federal District Court of South Carolina has codified the ones for all the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and that includes North Carolina as well as Virginia. And so because there's been various First Amendment constraints on this specific statute, the 871 provision was the one that was up in Watts in 1966 that we've covered before. That's where a gentleman was at a Vietnam War protest and said the first thing he was going to do with his rifle was put Lyndon Johnson in his sights. The Supreme Court said that would violate the First Amendment to criminally prosecute him for that. And then there have been subsequent cases all the way to Virginia versus Black, a case that also arose out of the Fourth Circuit, that deals with what is a so-called true threat. Now, the threat, here's what the jury will be instructed. The threat must be a true threat as opposed to political hyperbole, accompanied by a present intention, either to injure the president or to incite others to injure him, or to simply restrict his movements in anticipation of possible injury. The jury may find evidence of this intention from how the threat was communicated. That is, whether the defendant making the threat reasonably anticipated it would be transmitted in such a manner to such individuals, either the law enforcement officers defending him and protecting him, or to other individuals and inciting them to take action. A threatening statement must amount to a true threat is something other than idle chatter or political hyperbole. So the court noted if the communication was made in jest was made to a public audience that was in political opposition to the president and conditioned upon an event the speaker himself vowed would never happen. That's what the court determined in 1966 was not a true threat. Here, is it a serious expression of an intent to commit an unlawful act to a particular individual or group? If the indictment suffices, I think, for that. There's some people saying the indictment by itself cannot suffice for those meanings. I can tell you, I've been in front of cases in courts where James Comey's own FBI has indicted people on far less on exactly this. People that were, quite frankly, obviously crazy. I mean, there was no doubt anybody's mind in the whole courtroom that this was somebody that was nuts, that just said crazy stuff randomly on the street. And they were prosecuting this person, facing they had charged him up, unlike Comey here, to 10 years plus in federal prison for something that was clearly not capable of being acted upon and unlikely to incite anybody and wasn't to a broader public audience and so forth. Here you have somebody who knew exactly what he was doing because he's prosecuted people for less. So all those people rushing to his First Amendment defense are ignoring, and I get where some of them are coming from. They don't want this administration to misuse this case as a pretext to start punishing people on First Amendment grounds, like that student in Florida is being prosecuted for making a joke about Bibi Netanyahu's tendency to blow things up everywhere. Whenever he sees kids or sees students, he's like, let's go bomb Bibi, bomb away Bibi. That person, I get the concern. It's just for James Comey, when he knew exactly what he was doing, when he's prosecuted people for less, I'm a lot less sympathetic to the claim.
Can you read the part again about inciting other people? Because read that portion where that was one of my questions is nobody would really think that James Comey is going to go up and do something physical to the president. That's the whole point of the dog whistle is that read the part about the incitement of another party.
The jury may find evidence of this intention from how the threat was communicated and whether the defendant making the threat might reasonably anticipate that it would be transmitted to law enforcement officers or others with security of the president, or that it may lead others to injure him in lieu thereof.
Well, then,
so the incitement has to be. Now, there's the imminent requirements. By the way, the imminence requirement's not in the Fourth Circuit's jury instruction, just FYI. So so right now, under the current jury instructions of the Fourth Circuit, I believe this indictment survives a motion to dismiss. You never know for sure because so many judges are in the bag for Comey. But they've prosecuted and indicted people for less. And who he was and what he knew this meant, it makes a huge difference, in my opinion. And my guess is they have internal communications that show he knew exactly what he was saying, knew exactly what he was intending, knew exactly what he was trying to incite.
Well, and that's why it's the incitement part where did he know that other people out there might reasonably read it that way as a call to action? And I'm going back to my theory of the case, him with his book, 8647, and these are his 3 posts. And the third post says exactly what that jury instruction is telling, saying what to look out for. He singled out his enemies by name, suggested something should be done about them. His fans have obliged killing or grievously injuring some of his foes. So he knew what he was putting out was the definition of stochastic terrorism, if there ever is one.
He also knew, because one of the evidence of intent is if it's going to be, if you reasonably anticipate, it's going to be communicated to the president's security team, and that it will lead to change of movement. That's considered a legitimate threat. He knew that's how the team would have to react to it, knowing how people might interpret the former FBI director saying 8647. And so the Professor Turley was going through all of these hoops to try to say, 86, we don't know what 86 means. We don't know what reason. Yeah, it's complete nonsense.
Well, it's not just that. Everybody knew damn well what it meant after Gretchen Whitmer. Now, and the funny thing is, no matter what you do, the people who want to say it could mean 2 different things and nobody knows what it means. I pulled up a clip. This is Little Shop of Horrors from 86.
How am I supposed to keep on feeding you? Kill people? There must be someone you can 86 real quietly and get me some lunch.
Actually, I'm going to stop there. I don't want to get copy claimed on CommyTube. And so, on the one hand, some people say the best you could do is a movie from 40 years ago. No, that's how broad, historically, contextually understood this was. In the 80s, whenever Little Shop of Horrors came out, it was understood. In Vegas, back when it was founding, it was understood. In a bunch of crime. The one thing I had to correct is that I don't think I was corrected in that it was never specifically said in The Sopranos in the sense of killing. That lore arose because Tony Soprano, the last episode where he was, allegedly whacked, was the 86th episode. And so that spawned the lore that, it was from Sopranos. A Little Shop of Horrors, after Gretchen Whitmer, everybody knew that it meant potentially assassinate, murder. That was the scandal with Gretchen Whitmer. So Comey can pretend to be innocent all he wants and blame his wife all he wants. He knew damn well this was stochastic terrorism. This was a call to action for nutbags out there, fans who oblige. And he said he was doing it in his next post. And I'm sure they have internal communications to confirm.
And again, all they really need to know, be able to show, is would he reasonably anticipate there would be a security reaction to this? And that by itself is considered evidence of intent to a threat. Doesn't the former FBI director, know exactly that this was going to have to be the reaction? His motivation may have been to stuff his pockets by trying to boost a bad book sales. But that doesn't matter what his motivation is. What motive is what he would reasonably foreseeably anticipate as criminal intent. So I think this case, if the big X factor is, can you have an honest judge in any case involving a deep state actor that like Comey? And that's a big open question. But assuming that there is, this case a case that should reach the jury. And then he can spin it however he wants to spin it. But my guess is there's been substantial. Now, one thing I noticed is Catherine Herridge, who's otherwise a very good reporter, seemed misinformed about criminal cases. She suggested that in the discovery process, they might find some evidence in support of it. Criminal cases, the government, there is no discovery process. In a criminal case, all the discovery is done by the government prior to indictment through the grand jury. They have no right to discovery once the case starts. No right to use the grand jury for that purpose. So whatever evidence they have, they already have. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, they chose not to include in the indictment itself.
That's my question. And by the way, everybody give Catherine Herridge a break. It's not like she's stupid and has ruined her entire. She obviously just confounded civil with criminal for a one tweet that will never go. People are idiots. It was obvious she confounded criminal with civil, and then you move on. What I was curious about, and I've had this argument now going back and forth with Shipwrecked Crew. Robert, I think I've made up with Shipwrecked.
You on the other hand, Shipwrecked Crew.
Okay. Now he came after me. I say came after. He came after me during the Brian Cole indictment, where I said, I faulted it for being thin on facts, or at least having insufficient facts to justify, the case. And his argument was they don't have to allege anything in an indictment. They can allege the charges and that's it. And my response was, well, you're not making the best argument for instilling confidence in the process. People think that these federal prosecutions are ways to railroad somebody. And so, they don't have to allege anything. Okay, great. That's not going to make me feel better about the criminal justice system. But then you get to this indictment, which has nothing in it. And then the concern is they have nothing else. So they do not have to allege everything like you do in civil pleadings to say if you don't allege it.
Normally they don't. But the Comey indictment is a more normal federal indictment. These indictments that are designed for PR purposes are the ones that go on and on and on and on and on. And so your typical indictment is literally that short. And you can file a bill of particulars to demand what other facts support the indictment. The evidence the government has to disclose and turn over. Now, I think because this case is in the court of public opinion, they would have been better served with more intent evidence being presented within the indictment itself. But they chose not to. There's some suggestion that maybe the indictment was rushed. It took them over a year to bring the indictment, so I don't know if you call it rushed. But it may be the case that Todd Blanche Dubois is trying to salvage and save his own tenure at the Attorney General's office. He is the acting Attorney General currently, by bringing this case, the Southern Poverty Law Center case, and another case that we have, which is finally some kind of accountability, even if it's not as strong and as robust as it could be. At least it's something on the COVID cover-up that took place with Fauci and his pals.
Well, we'll segue into that, but the bottom line on this indictment, and you presume that they're not just rushing it with no further evidence. They probably have a great deal of other evidence that was submitted to the grand jury. They'll disclose it to the defense, and Comey will have fun with it. But this was not a harebrained, last-minute indictment. Presumably, they have more evidence. And either way, Comey confirmed everything. So I'm glad I'm not out in left field that this is an affront on freedom of speech, because in as much as you can't threaten somebody with a foreign language, you can't threaten somebody with well-known code. And when you explain that that's exactly what you're doing in your sequence of posts.
Yeah, and
All
what
right,
makes it
now-
worse for him is, as you point out, he had a monetary motivation to get maximum attention and to tie it into his book's theme of assassination. So there's really not much doubt that that's what he was doing. And now some people are like, well, he didn't really want Trump to be murdered. Well, maybe not. You never know with someone like Comey. But all it has to be is a threat, knowing that other people will take it that way, or that Secret Service will take it that way. And he clearly knew both. So I think they have evidence, reasonable inferential evidence, and they probably have some other specific evidence of intention, enough to at least get to the jury. And then the question is how the jury acts and reacts, assuming the judges are fair and impartial, which is always an open question when any deep state person is charged with a crime.
That was my other question. Todd has been doing some media rounds, and then, he's been saying things which people are using against him to say, oh, he just admitted that, he's not going to go after everybody who says 86 somebody. And then if one wants to view this as the prosecution is the cover-up, do you think there's any reasonable possibility that they're doing this to deliberately throw the case against James Comey and to ingratiate themselves into his good books for an upcoming administration?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think they may be trying to placate Trump with the indictment, and may not have, done as well as they could have with the indictment for that purpose. We'll find out later with what evidence they amassed in the year that it took to bring the indictment. But we said at the time he should be indicted.
I was screaming it at the time. And just to clarify for anybody out there,
there's a big difference between Comey and every person who ever says 86 somebody. There's a big difference. When James Comey says it, it's like Don Corleone said it. So it has a whole different meaning than when some homeless bum says it, or some lunatic on the street says it. But by the way, just go look up the cases. A bunch of lunatics have been charged under this statute. So I have notes by James Comey, who wanted him in prison for longer periods of time. How is he going to explain that to the jury? He's got huge problems because of what he has a long history of doing, is treating these kind of things as true threats. So that's why he was in a very unique position compared to everybody else.
And I'll just clarify, I don't think that Todd Blanche is trying to throw the case against Comey, because what gives me a little bit more confidence in Todd right now is that he's actually doing the things that, if the wrong people come back into power for, they'll impeach him and they'll go after Todd the same way they went after Jeff Clark, John Eastman, and all the other Trump lawyers. So I'm getting a little bit more confidence in Todd Blanche, because he's doing things that, in theory, could place him in a politically precarious position if the devil ever comes back into power. So I don't think he's throwing this for Comey, and I think it's about time. And okay, I feel a little vindicated in my theory, and a little vindicated that I'm not committing an assault on free speech. Nor on the practice of science and medicine, Robert. So Dr. David Morenz of the Fauci gang, and this is another guy, at the time, everybody was saying, why the hell is this guy not getting arrested? When it became known that they were deliberately, frustrating FOIA requests. They were deliberately deleting documents. They were deliberately waging, what do we want to call it? Political campaigns against doctors who were raising the alarm that COVID might have originated in a Wuhan Institute of Virology lab in China, and that third-party NGOs that were funded by the NIAID, Fauci, might have had a hand in this. And now the indictment came down, and it's damning to all hell. I mean, Fauci must be thanking his lucky stars, or whoever it was that gave him the pardon, because he's as guilty about in this as everybody else, but he got his pardon. So the allegations of this indictment is that David Morenz, one of the doctors, the chief doctors he was one of Fauci's assistants at the NIAID, that they were basically waging a deliberate political PR war against the doctors who were raising the possibility that COVID originated in a lab in Wuhan, China. They waged a political campaign to discredit, demonize these doctors. They then also destroyed, deleted emails that might have otherwise shown that they were doing this, that they knew about it. They were priding themselves on deliberate typos to frustrate FOIA requests and to make themselves FOIA proof. And there was some other chicanery about getting gifts from I forget whom, to toe the line that it wasn't originating in a lab in Wuhan, China. And he's been indicted. I mean, dead to rights as far as I'm concerned. And the only question is whether or not they can find a way to go after Fauci What's your take on the indictment? What's your take on the probability that there's a way to potentially either call Fauci back for testimony to see if he lies and then they can charge him for perjury, or if he's just getting off scot-free and he's going to die the demon that he is in life?
Well, what they should have done is subpoenaed him to testify in these proceedings. What they should do is subpoena him before Congress. What they should do is have a COVID reconciliation commission chaired by Robert Francis Kennedy Jr. That compels his testimony. Because of note, he is going to be in a catch-22 in that he has now been pardoned for everything that happened from 2014 to 2024. So he does not have a Fifth Amendment right or any risk of criminal indictment by the feds, or as I could tell, by the state, any state either, related to this, because it's all federal criminal behavior. So he couldn't assert the Fifth. So he would have to testify. And then what does he do? If he testifies honestly, he has to confess to the world what he did. Or he lies, and then he can get prosecuted. I've been recommending this strategy to people now ever since President Trump got elected. It's like, have a COVID reconciliation commission, do something with Congress, with congressional subpoenas, open up grand juries and subpoena Fauci. And if they're serious, that's what they'll do. And it will compel either a confession or it will justify a prosecution.
But he'll still get to plead the Fifth as Hunter Biden did because of the potential for state crimes. Will he not weasel out of it?
Not really,
that way?
but what's the state crimes?
Everything that he committed at the national scale. I mean, he injured
it's really
citizens.
just a federal crime. These are all Federal Records Act issues. These are all, there is no state analog. Because right now he could already be prosecuted for state crimes. Whatever state crimes are out there, he could already be prosecuted for. There's nobody that can come up with a state crime that can prosecute him because of the pardon only reaches federal crimes anyway. So what state crimes could he be at risk for? There were things for which Hunter Biden could be, they listed, a bunch of state crimes, but there were certain federal crimes that were unique to federal crimes for which he didn't really have a Fifth Amendment objection that could have been tested through the legal process. But I don't see anything that the Fauci's alleged that's a clear state crime related to this. You could allege maybe some other things somehow, but you would have to prove that he knew people were going to die and that he wanted them to die if you were going to go like the state homicide route or something like that. That'd be a very tricky path to prove. What you have easily is cover-up. What you have easily is what's indicted here, which one of the things that was not picked up by the press was who this particular bureaucrat says he got his instructions for concealing records, covering up records, destroying records, falsifying records. The Federal Records Act requires if you're doing certain federal government business, you've got to store those on federal email servers. And even if you're using a personal email server, you have to copy the federal email server or get a copy to the federal email server. So you forward it, for example. But either way, anything that involves federal government business has to be kept on the federal government server, cannot be destroyed, cannot be deleted, and is subject then to the FOIA Act, to the Freedom of Information Act request, and subject to archives and other officials having access to it. Here, this individual went to great lengths to not use his federal government email, use his private email instead, directed people to do the same. He said the reason why he was doing it was to hide it from subsequent FOIA requests or future administrations. So this was a conspiracy to obstruct FOIA and a conspiracy to violate the Federal Records Act. And by doing so, he committed other federal crimes that govern falsifying federal records, concealing federal records, obstructing investigations, and the like. So he committed a long litany of federal crimes. But who gave him the instruction to do it? Who told him to, quote, you need to start deleting your emails. You need to, quote, cover your rear by using personal emails and not copying your government emails. The lead Freedom of Information Act officer at the agency. That's who he says instructed him to do it. Been saying for a long time, the deep state's deepest allies run the FOIA departments at these key agencies, at the FBI, at the Justice Department. Who misled President Trump about what was in the Epstein files? It was the FOIA officers that led to Dan Paulus Bongino, counterfeit Cash Patel, who was brilliantly made fun of this weekend by Saturday Night Live, which actually discovered some humor this week what White House is doing it themselves with their winning things and other stuff. I thought I was watching Charlie Sheen, from 10 years ago. The winning, oil, gas, record levels, winning. Okay, whatever. The
I couldn't believe that they posted that. I zoomed through it. It was an actual hour of it.
Yeah, it was a disconnect. I guess they forget. I was just waiting for the president to come out and say, "You understand, everybody? I've got tiger blood. That's how I can take on the Persian tiger. I got tiger blood." That's where his mental state is these days. But the FOIA officials are the key corrupt actors because they have access to everything. Because in order to execute their duties as a FOIA officer, they have to have access to all the files and records and emails. So consequently, if you're the deep state, you make sure that's your person. And if you want to reform the deep state, you make sure it's your person instead of their person. Here you have a FOIA officer, unidentified, but apparently the head FOIA officer for the agency, saying, here's what you need to do. He didn't get this idea on his own. He was instructed by the lead gatekeepers of the deep state, which are in the FOIA office, at the DOJ, at the FBI, at HHS, at NIH, at the CIA, at all of them.
Why don't they get their names and go after them? I mean, they have to know who they are at this point.
Well, that's when we'll see whether Todd Blanche Dubois is for real. Because this was low-hanging fruit to get this guy, because he got documented by a lot of good faith actors on the outside. So if they're serious, then we start seeing the true co-conspirators get indicted. The true criminal instigators get indicted. We see Anthony Fauci subpoenaed to testify, confess, or go to jail. If you lie, that's when we'll see is this just a short-term effort that he wants to keep his job through the fall and say, look, Pam didn't get this done, but I got Comey and I got some COVID people and I got Southern Poverty Law Center. Is it that? And then maybe he tags on Brennan in Florida. Now, I'm all for those indictments because they're right and righteous indictments, independent of Blanche's motivation. But if he's serious about taking out the deep state, he extends and expands the Brennan case into everybody involved, and he goes after all the key people that are still there. Because I bet this FOIA officer is still there. So, Bobby Kennedy, you should be making sure some people are fired and replaced. Some of us have been advising this for a little while. We know that certain people are blocking it, even though I'm sure there'll be a hostage text from him next week. Swampy Susie is just wonderful. So we'll see how all that goes. But hey, at least it's a big step in the right direction, this indictment, whatever the motivations may have been to bring it, whatever limitations they are in the scope of who's being sought after. These are criminals that deserve to be prosecuted. And it gives us a little glimpse into the scale of the cover. For those that don't know and out there watching, what is the cover-up? The U.S. government helped create COVID. The U.S. government was giving money to NGOs to create COVID. That it was funded and moved offshore under the guise of China running it in order to hide it after Obama said no more doing bioweapons research. And they kept doing it. And they knew from the get-go that it was likely a bioweapon that COVID was released out of China. And they were the ones complicit, criminally complicit, for what they unleashing this bioweapon on the world. And that's why they went to great lengths to hide and cover up the entire paper trail. That's what this case is about, that it doesn't fully disclose the underlying reason for all this criminal conspiracy and cover-up.
I want to bring this up here because it's another question we got over in our locals community as well. This is on CommieTube. How is it legal to issue a pardon for someone who has not been convicted of a crime yet? Johnny Be Good. We discussed it back in the day that this was an untested. You can issue preemptive pardons for periods of time and swaths of behavior.
There's no limit on the pardon. Who is given it? The only limit is that it's a federal crime. That's it. There's no other limit. It has to be a United States federal crime, but you can do it into perpetuity. You can do it in the future. You can do it. The only dispute is whether or not you can pardon a crime that hasn't yet happened. That's the only question.
Oh yeah, a crime that hasn't happened, not behavior that has already occurred for which there's not necessarily been a charge. And right. God wins, says ARWD4H. And okay, so before we get too far. Why does he keep?
I love that. Swampy Susie, I think, is sneaking a look at us. See that from the chat.
Oh, yeah, hold on. See, I'm gonna get over it. We're gonna get some of the tip questions out of the way, but also so we can see the above average. How do I get to the bottom here? Like this. Bada bing, bada boom. And Susie, there she is. There's Susie, who's now on X. Robert. I mean, I think I noticed you noticed that as well.
Well, she's always been on X. She's just created a new account that is an official White House account, Wiles 47 that's up. But her personal account's always been up there.
Okay.
She just never posts on it. She follows other people, including Richard Barris, by the way.
Oh, Booma had asked which. I'll flag this one. We'll come back to which senators voted against it. Based on Fox News, does President Trump have a plan to preemptively? Okay, we got that. Neutralize the Dolphins, said Gray 101. I'm here for Barnes. Ty, friend and sponsor of my dad, who's been counselor therapist. I read this one already. Oh yeah, I got that. Chris Kraft says, Viva, can Bill Brown and I buy a Lord Have Mercy for mighty pay? Hold on.
We got somebody sending this cup.
Hold on. I'm going to take myself out all the way. You do it, Robert.
So thanks to the cup, Lord have mercy for mighty pay.
Booyah. How am I on this side? I don't want to be here.
Oh, I got an awesome. It's too big to pull over, but I got an Ella Blue humidor. Somebody sent me. They kept saying, "Hey, send a humidor." I was like, "Okay," and I got another humidor from somebody, so I thought maybe that was it. And he sent an Ella Blue 160th anniversary. That's just awesome.
Well, that's amazing.
So many thanks to the person who sent that.
And speaking of anniversaries, Bender is Great says, celebrate 250 years of American pride, homemade waving wooden flags. Each piece is carefully carved and finished to capture the spirit and stars of stripes, the spirit of the stars and stripes in a timeless design, perfect for your home, a gift, or honoring the USA's 250th anniversary. Use discount code LOCALS50 to get $50 off any full-priced item. renixwoodworking.com.
Yeah, those are beautiful. You
have
one behind you, right?
Yeah, I got one behind me. I'm gonna bring up the website so we can see this. Does it say? Hold on a second. Why is it? Because I didn't get the here. Renix Woodwork. You got to see what this looks like here. I'm gonna bring this out. Gonna bring you back in here, Robert. Bring this one back up. Work it here. Renix. Check it out. You have to see that they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. And here you can see what this one looks like. Thick, beautiful, and crafted with love. Oh, because you're not looking at it because I didn't put my fingers to bring it up here. Here we go. This is Renix Woodworking, and you can see the detail, the craft. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, beautiful, perfect for the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. The other got a great gift. Someone sent the Sojourner the actual legal records of the habeas petition filed by Sojourner Truth to get her kid out in the 1830s. First, before Amistad, born free, always free, was Sojourner's case, and it has all legal documents in it, like her petition, everything, which is fantastic. So many thanks to that person as well.
We've got the best community on earth, Robert. King of Biltong says, try any of our peri peri biltong, great biltong flavor with added mild heat, 50% protein, packed with B vitamins, creatine, iron, zinc, and more. BiltongUSA.com. Code, it's Barnes, not Barn. Code Barnes. That's how you know you're dealing with a real human, by the way, which is also amazing, for 10% off. Wesley says, what happens to the revenue from Comey's book if convicted? The subject of the book is similar to the alleged crime. Well, that's why they did the forfeiture in it, which leads me to believe that they already have evidence that he did this as some sort of ploy, scheme, whatever, to sell more books. Dominant One says, the Simps need to just keep watching the circus and cheering on their champions in spite of the lack of results. Well, I'll say it. We got three. We got the SPLC indictment. We got James Comey indictment. We got Dr. David Moran's indictment. We're making progress.
All of it happened. Two SCOTUS wins this week. We got it took them forever, but we finally got the Voting Rights Act decision, and then a big First Amendment win on discovery rights, which I'll actually be litigating, and I have been litigating now for years, but I've been running into hurdles, and of course I don't understand it. Finally, the Supreme Court unanimous decision got it. So 2 good SCOTUS rulings this week.
The redistricting. I'm blanking out.
This is the case we've discussed. This is a Louisiana case. So we discussed it when it was at the Fifth Circuit. We discussed it the first time. We discussed it after oral argument. This is the Voting Rights Act case, racial redistricting. Finally, we got the decision this week, 6-3. Though I understand why it took so long, it was because Barrett and Kavanaugh and Roberts had to do their technocratic. You know those law students and lawyers that are like they're just technocrats. Like only put them in like the contract division or something, transactional division. Don't let them anywhere like near litigation or anything that needs policy or legislation reform. They love that. But if you look at Regulation 4B3 2.5, those kind of people. That's what Barrett basically did to the case. So instead of just saying Voting Rights Act Act Part 2 is either unconstitutional, period, or it was never intended to apply to redistricting, which is historically correct. It was never, Voting Rights Act was, this particular Section 2 was written to get rid of all the hurdles they put in that were designed to exclude black voters, but also poor white voters from voting after the Civil War, when the old Redeemer South, the bourbon class South, the planter, aristocratic merchant, bankster, railroad elite got mad at the populist revolutions and rebellions taking place everywhere. So they wanted to remove both working class whites and black voters entirely from the polls using grandfather clauses and poll taxes and literacy tests and discriminatory application and interpretation of those rules and so forth. And what they did is remove all their political capital. They couldn't sit on juries. They couldn't sit on grand juries. They couldn't run for office. They couldn't, their votes didn't matter. So they basically were, that's why in 1900 Mississippi had fewer voters in 1860 Mississippi. That wasn't because there were a bunch of slaves voting in 1860. That's how many working class and poor whites they stripped from the rolls in Mississippi using this guise. Now, Barrett comes from that class, by the way, that old planter aristocratic class. So maybe there was a little part of her that wanted to keep some of these old rules in place. But it was intended to just get rid of all of those. It says nothing about redistricting at the time. There was nothing about redistricting in it. That was just superimposed by a compromise reached by the Republicans, the corrupt corporate Republicans, and the corrupt institutional Democrats, who were like, let's screw over all the populists in the South once more by reinterpreting a Voting Rights Act that was designed to reinstate populist power, to strip them of that power by putting all the whites in one district and all the minorities in another district. And we know the minority representatives we can just buy off to the donor class, so there'll be no populists left out of the South. It will either be the rich white Republicans or the big money donor Democrats controlling who's in power once again. It was a bogus compromise from day one and unconstitutional from its inception. But finally, the Supreme Court comes and says, if it's racial redistricting, it is likely unconstitutional unless you can show it's the only justification and explanation for the way in which the districts are drawn. If politics suffices, recognizing that there's a direct correlation between race and politics, if you can point to politics as the why you redistricted, then it is completely constitutional and the VRA is inapplicable, because to apply it in that context violates the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, which was supposed to prohibit determining and dictating anything based on race. So big ruling. South Carolina says they're going to redistrict. Tennessee is talking about redistricting. Georgia's talking about redistricting. Alabama's talking about redistricting. Mississippi and Louisiana and Florida are talking about redistricting. So Republicans may get up to a dozen new seats that lean much more in their direction than was the case before this. So that's its impact on the midterms. But legally and constitutionally, it's the right decision. It gets federal courts out of the race-based drawing district. The whole neoliberal, corrupt corporate crony alliance has finally been broken.
How does this, if it is to materialize in time for the midterms, how does it materialize? How quickly can you redistrict and how quickly could you? You can do it right away. Yeah. So, I mean, there's some states that are petitioning to do it right away. And I don't think any courts are going to interrupt or interfere, even in states where they've already had primaries. And they did that before during COVID, remember? They went back and stopped the whole elections even after primaries were done and rescheduled everything. So they've already done this because of COVID. So they can do the same thing all over again. And it's only whether the will. In Georgia, they're trying to weasel their way out of it because that's typical Georgia, because they're all a bunch of corrupt because they understand, the Georgia Republicans understand what this deal was all about. This deal was about keeping the corrupt elites in control, neoliberal, to control the black districts, and country clubbers to control the white districts. They don't want any of these commoners coming up, the uniting working class white and black voters. They don't want any of that happening again. So they're like, let's reconsider this redistricting. But there's going to be so much pressure. I think even Kemp, who wants to be president someday, that's how delusional that guy is, may have to capitulate. And Ratberger, who's running for governor, might have to capitulate too at Secretary of State's office. And then they're on board now. So Louisiana's already going to redistrict, no doubt about that. They're going to redistrict probably in Mississippi. Alabama, she tried to say no, and the governor capitulated within 24 hours. Florida, they're already going to do it. The problem in Florida is a state constitutional provision that says you can't redistrict for partisan purposes. So the Supreme Court just said it's constitutional as long as you're doing it for partisan purposes. But Florida State Sorry, I just for partisan purposes as opposed to racial purposes, race-based
Right. That
purposes.
if you can explain the racial disparity in the districting because of partisan differences affiliated or with that racial grouping, then it is a partisan redistricting rather than a racial redistricting. However, Florida state constitution prohibits partisan redistricting.
What type of redistricting would not be partisan? It seems like it's a fundamentally.
They've made it very hard in Florida. It was passed back in 2010, at the peak of that movement for nonpartisan redistricting. So you need things to be like basically you can't look at party. So and the problem here is DeSantis has been going around yipping about he's going to do 5 more Republican seats. So I don't think any Florida redistricting. I think the Virginia redistricting. Our prediction was correct that the Supreme Court wouldn't capitulate so easily. They haven't, so that redistricting may never go through. But also the Florida redistricting may never go through because I think the courts are going to say, how in the world are you going to say you didn't take partisanship into consideration when DeSantis is on record for 4 months talking about doing it for partisan purposes?
Robert, I want to bring something up because A, it was a crypto, and B, I liked the comment over on the top. Oh, yeah, it's from Maydog. It says, the Bourbon Class South. Never heard it phrased that way. From the title, I'm interested. Is there a fee to join? Only if there's bourbon. Bada bing, bada boom. Thank you very much, Maydog. All right, so that's good news, and that can be...
And then the even better SCOTUS decision. Now, I mean, this is huge, long-term. We're out of the business of this whole corrupt oligarchic elites being able to control congressional districts through race-based redistricting. That's a massive win. But maybe more consequential to the everyday person in their everyday life is the First Amendment and generally privacy ruling on discovery and and your ability to sue without having to wait to get screwed in a state court. So it's a huge, huge win. Unanimous decision written by the one who still writes the best opinions, which is Justice Gorsuch.
I thought you were going to say Clarence Thomas, but this is the women's resource.
Clarence Thomas is my favorite justice, but the best written, the most refined, old school writing still comes from Gorsuch.
So this one is the women's, I want to get the name right, Women's Resource Centers, which was a New Jersey-based, what do they call it? Reproductive-oriented, faith-based.
They were a pro-life group. Getting harassed by a bunch of baby killers.
No, because what amazed me when I'm reading this is that like their main fault for this faith-based reproductive organization is that they didn't actually offer abortions, and that seemed to be what the New Jersey who I forget who was the AG or the Attorney General didn't like. It's a faith-based reproductive rights organization, so quite clearly they're going to be grounded in God and grounded in religion, and they were soliciting donations. And the AG of New Jersey, who I don't want to make any jokes, but I'm going I don't know, needs adrenochrome or needs to sacrifice souls to the devil. What's the name of it? To Baphomet, says the problem with this organization is it claims to be a reproductive rights based organization, but it actually doesn't offer abortions. So we think that their donors would feel defrauded if they ever found out that this organization they donated to didn't fund abortions. And so they issued a subpoena to get the donors because they basically wanted to investigate this organization and go after them potentially for misrepresentations towards their donors, to solicit donations as a reproductive rights organization, faith-based, that doesn't actually offer abortions. And so that's an oxymoron, according to the AG. They issue this subpoena to basically get the records of the donors of this faith-based organization. They say no and they challenge it, but they get to state court. There was some issue as to whether or not it had to stay in state court or could go to federal court. And basically the federal court said they wouldn't adjudicate until the state court said that it has to stay in state court and adjudicate on it. And they did. And lo and behold, they say, did they say no standing or did they say the subpoena is okay?
The federal court said no standing.
So, I mean, there's a back and forth between the state and federal court level. But the bottom line is twice, I think the federal court said no standing. The state court said, yeah, you could have to comply with this. You haven't suffered injury yet, unless I'm mistaken. And then it gets to the Supreme Court and they say 9-0, no, you don't have to wait for the injury. B, this is obviously, I want to say it's obviously a federal issue, but it was obviously an issue that you didn't need to wait for the injury, the irreparable injury to be done, because the AG wanted to go fish around, get the details on the donors under the pretext that they wanted to find donors who were pissed off that they were donating to a reproductive rights organization that didn't actually offer abortions, but they probably wanted to go and harass and harangue the donors as well. And so 9-0, you can let us know what the Supreme Court ruled.
Yeah, so what you have is all these state administrative agencies issue their so-called administrative subpoenas that are not judicial subpoenas. But if you don't comply with them, they then go to courts, state courts, and get contempt findings against you, get fines issued against you. I'm litigating this in Pennsylvania where they're going after the farm workers all over again, the ones they illegally locked up a couple of years ago. They're back to harassing them again based on its, they don't make them parties to the case. They don't name them to the case. They don't go through any proper procedure. The subpoena they're talking about is an administrative subpoena, not a judicial subpoena. The subpoena is more than 5 years old. It's to an entity that doesn't even exist anymore. But, they've gotten so loose with this that it's a way to lock people up if you don't give them whatever they want, whenever they want. And their pretext is usually that you're a licensed entity. You have some sort of organizational structure under state law, that you're a citizen of the state. That's kind of it. And they use that to basically harass and find out everything about you and invade your privacy. And then in civil suits, this happens all the time. In various vaccine mandate suits, they seek your whole medical history. They seek your religious history. They seek your political history. They seek your familial history. And you have courts capitulating to this over and over again. If you don't give up your whole life, if you don't sit for a mental health exam from one of their lunatic shrinks, you're not allowed to go forward with your case. You might be threatened with sanctions for even bringing the case. That's how insane it's been. And they've not recognized that the right of privacy, the right of affiliation, of association, of expression, whether it's religion, press, petition, or speech, that all of those rights protected under the First Amendment, further protected under the Fourth Amendment, a right against the state getting into your papers, as it used to be known as the Fourth Amendment, not just your home, but your papers is the thought process back then, which means by the way, your business papers, by the way, that they've long ignored. And then your Fifth Amendment right to property, liberty, with due process and equal protection of the laws. All of these combined create a right to privacy in a meaningful sense. That some conservatives foolishly tried to abandon because it was misapplied to apply to abortion. It's good if it applied for abortion, let's just get rid of the right to privacy, which was always insane. That's what these collective rights are meant, and it means including the right to associate with whom you choose. The right of assembly means the right of association. Otherwise, the right of assembly has no point or purpose, and that includes your donor list, your membership list, your client list, your customer list, your vendor list, things that go into anybody involved in any kind of business that has a religious or political, expressive, or associative quality, such as, say, an Amish farmer in Pennsylvania, such as the people working for Amish farmers in Pennsylvania, or wide range of other contexts. People challenging the vaccine mandate have a right of religious expression that includes the right of anonymity in that regard, the right to keep it secret and private when it has nothing. What you have to do is you have to show, once you show that what they're requesting involves something that you have a right or expectation of privacy in, that you have a religious affiliation to, a political expression correlated to it, a issue of speech or petitioning the government for redress of grievances, or press connected to it, that then they have to show more than the bottom but low limited standard of mere possible relevance. That instead they have to show it's essential to their case. The way they've described it is it requires something equivalent to, if not all the way up to, or close to strict scrutiny. That has to be sufficiently tailored to a legitimate government interest to justify that intrusion. And what Justice Gorsuch also highlighted in this decision is that not only is there heightened scrutiny required, but he says that is particularly the case when it involves dissenting groups, when it involves religious minorities, political minorities, cultural or social minorities, like third parties or independent groups or other, the people that are not in the majority. That's when we have to look out in particular whether or not the state, which includes the courts in discovery cases, because that's the state acting in that capacity. That's why the First Amendment applies to defamation cases, because it's the state courts, the agents of the state, that are enforcing it. The agents of the state are the only ones that can enforce contempt proceedings, the only ones that can demand these subpoenas in the first place or enforce the subpoenas even if they're for a private party in the second instance, that all of those people need to be protected and high levels of scrutiny need to be applied and skepticism applied. That's part one. Part two is that you can go to federal court right away. They used to force feed you into state court. You don't like the state administrative agency? Take it up with the agency. If you don't like what happens then, take it up with the state court before you're ever allowed to go to the federal court. And then when you get to federal court, what do they say? Res judicata, collateral estoppel. It already got adjudicated by the state that was screwing you. So the final Supreme Court said, you don't got to wait for any of that hogwash. You can go right to federal court under Section 1983 of Title 42. I might know some Amish workers that are thinking about doing that work with the Amish, but are not themselves Amish, so they can sue. There may be people affiliated and associated that can bring suit who are not Amish now, because this was the big hurdle, being able to procedurally pursue these remedies, along with the lack of recognition of the substantive right. To quote from the Supreme Court, the First Amendment guarantees all Americans the right to speak, worship, publish, assemble, and petition their government freely. Each of these rights, this court has long understood, necessarily carries with it a corresponding right to associate with others that is easily undermined and impinged and impaired if you allow the state to use its discovery tools as a way to eviscerate it. So big win for discovery against invasive discovery. Big win for the First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Big win against these rogue agencies and rogue state courts.
Well, amazing. Speaking of rogue agencies and rogue courts, I'll start this with a video, Robert. And I don't know if you saw it. And I know that if you did see it, you would have said it's not just supremely unfunny. It's offensively unfunny. The Onion having taken over the Infowars brand, and they have I don't know who this guy is impersonating Alex Jones. Let me just play this for you before we get into what's happening with the Onion, Alex Jones, and his new network, the Alex Jones Network.
But I'm going to sip from the blood of the forsaken. This is real human blood. You can find this at the Infowars store.
I want to say something. I do a better Alex Jones interpretation in person.
I'm not saying that I do a better Alex Jones than this guy right here. Okay, this guy is a washed up has-been, a total hack, not funny. He's actually as unfunny as okay, never mind. I do a better Alex Jones than this jackass.
This is human blood curated from the forsaken and the sinners. All right, this is pure premium blood, tested, FDA unapproved. And this is just human blood.
I don't know what he's doing.
As part of my satanic ritual, I am a servant to Satan, and thank God I was able to get him and the Lord to sit down and come to their senses and get things back to before Satan was cast into hell. So I'm part of that. I'm part of the peace movement.
It's so bad.
It's thick. It tastes like blood.
Alex, I mean, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And you know that had they been able to, and had they succeeded in their attempts to procure the rights to Alex Jones's image, likeness, and voice, they would have been using AI to create indiscernible imagery of what they cannot possibly do because that impersonator sucks garbage out of a garbage bin. But all that to say, Robert, so the word of the week last week was that the Onion had successfully achieved their goal of appropriating the brand of Infowars. And they were going to do, sabotage it the way that is effectively sabotage. I couldn't keep up with the procedural back and forth or whatever ended up happening because it was an announcement. Alex came out and said, look, they're going to do it. Last broadcast, one way or the other, Thursday, I think it was. And then it turns out that the federal court somehow intervened and at least stayed or paused the Onion taking over the assets, the brand of Infowars. So I don't know when that clip was put out, in what context. But the bottom line is Alex Jones, one way or the other, has now started the Alex Jones Network. It's under new ownership, and Alex will continue with his voice without his assets, whatever is protected under homesteading laws in Texas. And it's going to be the same old Infowars under the new brand Alex Jones Network, much like OMG is the old Project Veritas, and to the victor go the spoils of what was Project Veritas. What ended up happening with the Court of Appeal in Texas? I don't know if it's federal, it's in bankruptcy, intervening and, I don't know, impeding the takeover of the Onion of Infowars?
So what you have is 2 state court cases, one out of Austin, Texas, one out of Connecticut. The 2 cases, the Texas case is still, the underlying case is still on appeal pending before the Austin Court of Appeals, which hasn't yet ruled on it. In Connecticut, they just turned a blind eye, and the Supreme Court never got involved, and the Court of Appeals turned a blind eye to it, and the U.S. Supreme Court turned a blind eye to it, so that judgment is effectively final. While all of those cases' appeals were pending, the Infowars went through a bankruptcy petition. As part of while the bankruptcy petition was ongoing, the state court judge, that loony rainbow hair-colored state court judge, who redid her hair for the movie set to be shown in her courtroom, literally brought in a movie set that was filmed, movie cameras, movie directors, film people, that's all they do. They set up cameras all around the courtroom to get special angles and all the rest. Literally a joke of a trial. There was no trial on the merits in any Alex Jones case. Anybody that tells you, oh, Alex Jones did this bad, that bad, then why did they deny him a trial on the merits? In 2 very liberal jurisdictions with liberal jury pools and liberal judges. Why did they deny him a trial on the merits? Even if you think he defaulted something, which he didn't, even if you did, wouldn't you want a trial on the merits if he was so wrong?
Robert, admittedly, I only practiced for 13 years up in Quebec. You've practiced for longer. Has there ever been a case where someone was defaulted into liability based on alleged, even if confirmed, discovery obligation?
It's very, very rare that you see any default issued ever. Usually a default is only issued when the party has never appeared in the case, was given multiple opportunities to appear in the case, and doesn't participate at all in the case.
But even then, and this is what I try to highlight to everybody, even then, it's not a default into liability. It's just a default foreclosed from pleading. The plaintiff still needs to make their evidence and still needs to show to the court that they have a bona fide contract type thing. They don't just get to walk away without having to show the evidence. Okay.
It's called a death penalty sanction. What they did to Alex Jones. It's very rarely ever been done in the history of the state of Texas. Very rarely ever been done in the history of the state of Connecticut. And here they did it with someone who participated throughout the litigation, who produced millions of pages of documents and information, who sat for hundreds of hours of depositions. You will not find another case where somebody was denied their right to a trial on the merits in front of a jury with those set of facts anywhere in the history of the United States of America. So it is the most egregious precedent in that regard. And what has been happening, so in the collection stage, the same Austin judge who rigged the trial, the same Austin judge who staged it for a movie set, the same Austin judge who walked the red carpet when that movie was released, that same Austin judge ignored the federal bankruptcy court and was issuing receivership orders on Infowars, even though Infowars is in bankruptcy, because the Austin judge figures the bankruptcy court will do nothing about it. And she can just abuse her power and keep abusing it because the governor is such a waste of space in Texas. It's not the last thing that man can't stand up for, you might say. So
for those who don't know, he's in a wheelchair. Robert, you're
yeah, exactly. Yes, I'm making fun of him for that. He goes around milking it, and then he can't stand for nothing. He just drives me nuts. So he pretends to be the sincere, strong governor. Guy's a wuss. Guy's a rhino. And this case is an embarrassment, ongoing embarrassment to the state of Texas that it's occurring. It's so embarrassing, as I've been arguing for a long time. This case doesn't indict Alex Jones. This case indicts the legal system of the United States of America. It indicts every corrupt, rogue, partisan judge who cares more about their political prejudices than they do the rule of law in America. This case exposes the judicial system as something that doesn't care about the Constitution, doesn't care about the rule of law, doesn't care about impartiality or independence, or any of the rest. Now, this is the loony Connecticut judge,
but Robert,
who's another loony judge.
Listen to this.
I'll make the following observation. This stunningly cavalier attitude with respect to their discovery obligations is what led to the default in the first place. The defendants have consistently engaged in dilatory and obstructive discovery practices from the inception of these cases right through to the trial. And finally,
To the trial.
I will note there is no notice in this file to this minute of any supplemental compliance producing the Google Analytic documents, which is required by the practice book, but was also required by my clear court order of September 30, 2021, which apparently was not followed.
Apparently.
So the motion is denied for these reasons, and the court hereby sanctions the defendants by precluding them from presenting evidence or argument that they did not profit from the Sandy Hook coverage.
Just so everyone understands, the Google Analytics. So even if you think that they were entitled to that, my understanding is that they didn't.
It was completely fake. This fraudulent judge, this lying, deceptive judge who belongs in a prison for her violation of civil rights, for if Harmeet Dillon was not too busy converting the Civil Rights Division into the Israeli Rights Division, might be paying attention to do. That's what this judge belongs, is lying to you. Because what they did is they made up their whole case. The Sandy Hook lawyers are a bunch of bottom barrel scum. They're a bunch of lunatics. 90% of the people that suffered anything bad in Sandy Hook refused to join the case against Alex Jones because they recognized how outrageous it was. What they did is they claimed that Alex Jones made all this money off promoting that Sandy Hook didn't happen, even though they knew that was a lie. Even though they knew Alex Jones, 99% of what Infowars published said Sandy Hook happened and the kids died. 99% of what Infowars published said Sandy Hook happened and the kids died. You probably have, many people out there probably never heard that. But so how do they come up with this scam of a case, this crime of a case, this fake of a case? These politically motivated lawyers with these corrupt judges in their pocket, politically and personally and professionally. They pretend that this is why I told Alex from day one, they're never going to let you have a trial on the merits. Because what they do is they say, we demand you give us evidence of your guilt. And he's like, well, I'm not guilty. So there is no evidence of my guilt. I didn't make any money off of this. I wasn't doing analytics or anything else. They're like, aha, evidence of his guilt is that he refuses to produce evidence of his guilt. His refusal to confess is evidence that he is guilty. This is the insanity that corrupt judge in Austin and that corrupt judge in Connecticut pushed, and all the other judges signed off on it. So why did the Austin Court of Appeals set aside and restrain the loony Austin judge from going forward and exercising receivership control and just giving Infowars over to the Onion? It's because even they're recognizing this embarrasses them. This indicts them. This condemns them. They are the partisan, prejudicial frauds and hacks. They are everything Alex Jones and everyone else has ever said and then some. It is the humiliation of the legal system that this case has even come to this level. And if we had an honest governor of Texas, if we had an honest Supreme Court of the United States, if we had an honest Supreme Court of Texas, it would have been stopped a long time ago. But even those courts are like, this is ridiculous. This is preposterous. We're abusing all of our rules. We're ignoring all of our principles. We're being exposed to the world as the naked emperors of partisan prejudice that we have always been. And that's the truth of what happened in the Alex Jones case.
No, I was looking because I wanted to double check. I couldn't remember if they no longer had access to their Google Analytics at the time, but just reviewing my memory, they produced 35 pages of Google Analytics to the court, and the court still said they didn't fully comply.
Because they had to create it, because they never did Google Analytics.
No, and well, that's another thing people don't
so
appreciate.
They're like, no, Judge, I don't believe it. They're like, fine, we'll go back and try to do some for you, but we never were doing any. And the Google Analytics proved her case was garbage. And they were this is why they all knew it. This is why they could never allow anybody that says anything otherwise. Why? Including President Trump, who's half on his, God knows where his brain is on a given night. But in his attacks on Alex related to this, which is just embarrassing for a guy that's subject to all kinds of lawfare, to celebrate the lawfare against somebody else is just one more sign of his betrayal of his own voters. But why did they never allow Alex Jones to have a trial on the merits if their evidence was so strong? If you believed he committed this horrible, horrible thing, wouldn't you be eager to have a publicly broadcast trial on the merits? Wouldn't you want to have that jury judge him? Wouldn't you want the world to see the evidence on the merits? He was prohibited, as you just saw from that judge. He was prevented from presenting his own defense. He was prevented from telling the jury he was innocent. That is not the American legal system, and it is indictment of that rogue judge who violated his federally protected civil rights, who belongs in a prison cell along with her corrupt husband, pal, and the same of that corrupt rogue judge in Austin, Texas. And the only question is, will they at some point, years from now, recognize how atrocious this precedent is, how embarrassing it is to the legal system of the United States? It's embarrassing that Megyn Kelly stood by this. It's embarrassing, Megyn. You look like a crock. You look like a political hack standing by this embarrassing case. So if you're anybody that's conservative on the law that stands by this case is a disgrace, a damnable disgrace. Because what they did to Alex Jones made a mockery of the Constitution of the United States, a mockery of the Constitution of the state of Texas, and a mockery of the rule of law.
I'm not there with you on the on assessing Trump's mental acuity or mental status. As a matter of principle, I did not like his post where he was relishing in the lawfare against Alex Jones and not acknowledging that it was the same lawfare that was weaponized against him, and nobody out there should be using the $1.5 billion judgment against Alex Jones. It's an indictment of the system and not Alex Jones.
Yep. But even though, it was a privilege to be the last guest ever on Infowars. Infowars is, the king is dead, but long live the king. Infowars is gone, and is now that weirdo loony. If you had any doubt how loony the Onion owners are, just that guy is just kind of freaky to listen to and watch. But you can go to Alex Jones Live. Alex Jones is back. Again, you really can't kill the king as long as the king the real king is the people in the audience that support him. He is still out there, still broadcasting, still going, not going to stop, not going to shut down, not going to go quiet, not going to be silenced. And independent people operate all of Alex Jones Live, so it's exempt from all the bankruptcy case. It's exempt from all the civil judgments because the mistake they made were two big ones. One, of course, when buying Infowars, all they literally bought was a web domain and a name. Because Alex gave away all of his, he didn't claim any copyright on any content he has ever made. He gave it away for 25 plus years. He's like, hey, everybody, share it with whoever you want. Do it whatever you want with it. Make a meme of it if you want. Make a parody of it if you want. Make a song of it if you want. Do any of that you want. You can have it. I have no copyright. What does that mean? It's not a legal asset under their control. So they can't control it. They tried to get his name and tried to get his image. That failed because the 13th Amendment, thank God, still exists. And the court, and at least the bankruptcy court, recognized how nuts that would be to try to steal his name and image. So all they didn't get any of his video content library. They didn't get any of his, anything of consequence. All they got was a mostly empty studio, a name that that nobody's going to care about in 2 years. And now people are, in fact, Jones had 9 million viewers of people that went to his site within 24 hours of it being loaded. So Alex is going nowhere and is going to stay strong. The other thing they always misjudged about him, he doesn't care about the money. That's never been his motivation. His motivation has always been the idea, the message. That's why he's taken risk after risk after risk in his career. He stood up when 9/11, got fired and got kicked off every radio station he was on. He was going to be the next Rush Limbaugh. Stood up repeatedly throughout no matter what it is. When he thinks the president of the United States is not being honest with his voters, he says so, even though he gets hammered left and right from people all over the place, including from the president himself. This is a guy who's always going to stand by his beliefs, doesn't care about the money, cares about the message. He's about a pro-human message against the anti-human elites. And he will continue to be that man until the day he's gone. And even then, his voice will echo in history long after his critics are forgotten.
They should have learned. They did not learn the Project Veritas lesson. Who thinks of Project Veritas now? Nobody. It's OMG and it's James O'Keefe. And who's going to think of Infowars? It's going to be nobody. It's going to be Alex Jones Live. And that was the website that I brought up here and shared around. Robert, I was going to make a segue that I will not make. Let's just go into the Candace Owens defamation lawsuit. What was the segue that I was going to make?
An Alex Jones wannabe who's nowhere near the IQ of Alex Jones.
It doesn't even work. Okay, so Candace Owens has been sued. I guess it's the second time. I only know of two offhand right now, Brigitte Macron and Now it is Brian Harple, the former lead of the security for Charlie Kirk, with a massive defamation lawsuit. I mean, it doesn't specify quantum, but it's above the $75,000 threshold, and we'll see where, what they ultimately claim. It's a sprawling lawsuit that alleges Candace Owens defamed Brian Harple, who was the former lead of Charlie Kirk's security, arguing that, a lot of the allegations were, I don't say subjective, but they were matters of opinion, that he was covering up for his own incompetence, incompetent, had a hand in Charlie's assassination, whether that's through passive failure to secure or active participation, if you think that there's some sort of deeper conspiracy going on. I read through it and I fleshed through it on the show on Friday. And other than the statement, which was, I believe, factually incorrect, that Brian Harple was seen at Fort Huachuca by Mitch Snow with Erica Kirk and members of the security because they were planning an op the day before. And in fact, at least according to Brian Harple, he wasn't there. He was in Arizona. He provided flight log information to Candace Owens, which apparently she said doesn't convince her was not a sufficiently strong alibi. And she continued to assert that Brian Harple was seen at Fort Huachuca at some secret meeting with Mitch Snow, Erica Kirk, and other members of the military. So this was a planned operation against Charlie Kirk. Other than that, I wasn't thoroughly convinced that any of the other allegations would be sufficiently objectively false and defamatory, insofar as saying it was a negligence or failed security, whatever, failing an allegation that he was actively in on it, proactively set it up. I don't know how that succeeds. Then when it comes to the only statement of fact, which I think is demonstrably false, then the question is going to be only whether or not it's defamatory in the broader context of what she was laying out in her series of episodes. They alleged civil conspiracy to defame between Candace Owens and Mitch Snow. And the reason, and you'll tell me, again, former Canadian schnook civil lawyer, but the reason I found that curious is because I have the feeling they're going to try to hold Candace liable for statements Mitch Snow made on her show that Candace herself didn't necessarily make, positively assert, but they're going to say it was a civil conspiracy for her to have him on her show, make these statements, which she didn't make herself, for which she would otherwise not be liable, but allege civil conspiracy to try to hold Candace responsible for statements made by Mitch Snow. And I felt that might be a little weak as well. So am I right or wrong about that last element? And what's your overall take about this, knowing how you feel about Candace in general?
It's the person who ran the security firm for Charlie Kirk, Brian Harple, was brought suit against Candace Owens and others individually and in the various corporate entities in the Middle District of Tennessee. They have some venue issues they're trying to overcome as to one of the co-defendants. There is the dispute is over $75,000, and there's a diversity of jurisdiction amongst the defendants. Even if they lose that individual, they would keep diversity jurisdiction because the plaintiff is not from Tennessee, and because there are co-defendants of Candace Owens who are not from Tennessee. That are from, so there'd be complete diversity between the plaintiffs and the defendants still, including Candace Owens' own corporate entities, which are registered in Delaware. The three different claims they've really brought, defamation, conspiracy, and false light invasion of privacy. Where I think there is some weakness in the complaint is that conspiracy is not a separate claim. So what you really have is defamation and false light. That's what you have. Conspiracy is a method of liability. Aiding and abetting is a method of liability. It is not its own cause of action. So you say defamation, here's how this person is liable, this is what they said. And then you may say, here's something that somebody else said, but they're liable for because they conspired with them to make the statements, or they aided and abetting the statements thereof, right? It's a method of liability. It's not its own cause of action. And whenever I see that, I immediately, okay, whoever does that doesn't do a lot of civil tort law. It stands out right away. The lawyers who brought this case are not even Tennessee lawyers. They went out and got a politically connected set of law firms. In the case of Brian Harple, I suspect Turning Point is organizing and orchestrating this at some level. And the people they got was Harmeet Dillon's firm, or her prior firm. Now I see all these Candace lovers, Jimmy Dore, God bless him, They repeat this nonsense that these people are as bad at Candace at basic fact checking. They cannot get basic facts right. I'm going to tick everybody off tonight. Tick off the dear leader Trumpers. I'm going to tick off the Candace Queen fans. Tick off the Democrats and Jones haters. So, might as well, take them all off while we're going. But they cannot help themselves to save the love of good Lord. This was my problem with her Brigitte Macron suit. What happened in that suit, leading to that suit, is she made up a whole bunch of ridiculously stupid things that she's going to get easily found accountable for. But here her supporters are doing the same thing. So, for example, they said, the associate is an associate of Harmony Dillon's firm. Now, the dude used to be an associate at Harmony Dillon's firm. He now has his own firm. He's co-counsel on this case, but don't pretend he's still part of the Dillon firm. And they're like, Harmony Dillon is going to profit from this. Harmony Dillon has already sold all of her interest in the firm. She has zero equitable or legal interest in the firm. People can't figure that out to save themselves. So they just get basic things wrong. But the legitimate criticism would be these guys are in over their head. There are some young kids, it looks to me, who think they're ready to rock and roll, who are not ready to rock and roll. By the way, you know who has the biggest Israel first lawyer in all of the suits involving Candace Owens? Take a wild guess. Oh, yeah, it's Candace Owens. She hired the biggest Israel whore in the entire legal world, not named Alan Dershowitz, to be her lead defense lawyer. So save me all the Israel first people are coming after her. Well, why are they representing her then? She does more good work for Mossad than anybody on the planet with her lunatic, wacky, nut job conspiracy theories that a 6-year-old could figure out are wrong if they could just go on Google.
Well, who's the lawyer, Robert? At the risk of asking a question, maybe I don't want to ask. Who's her defense lawyer?
I mean, he used to be the ambassador to Israel, was in his law firm. So that's who she hired, right? It's like, I wonder what's going on. I'd be like, don't you understand? The Israel Dillon law firm is connected to Israel lobbyists. I have no doubt they are. I mean, they're a politically connected firm on the right. They're nowhere near as Israel first as her firm is. Just research it. Well, but they don't even they go, what? Because they can't research for more than 2. Project Constitution? Take that out of your name, pal. You're too stupid to even be talking. Whoever told you there's no such thing as a dumb question was being nice to you. All that guy does is get stuff wrong, and Jimmy Dore goes out and retweets it. These guys are going to get sued down the road because they're stupid enough to believe that Candace Owens knows what truth is. She wouldn't know what truth is if it fell on her head.
I'm just reading it, so I can't even make sense of some of the chat. I was trying to find the one that said you should have Jimmy Dore on. He'll really set you straight. Look,
and I like Jimmy, but for the love of God, Jimmy, quit repeating all the stupid stuff these people put out. The legitimate criticism is they went and found a politically connected firm that is not skilled in Tennessee defamation law, and it's obvious by the suit, because what you're pointing out is you're not sure exactly which fact is being alleged that's false. Well, that's a sign of a real crappy defamation suit. And then they have conspiracies. If I'm a state court or federal court judge and I pick up, and I know those judges up in the Middle District, and I see somebody has alleged as a separate cause of action, civil conspiracy as a separate cause of action, aiding and abetting, I'm like, oh, I'm not dealing with a real lawyer. And when I see they can't have separate, clear, identified what's a fact, what's an inference from a fact, what's an opinion, but with factual facts inferred. Now, there is plenty enough here to get to a jury, plenty enough here to bankrupt her for after the Macron's already bankrupt her. So that's my opinion on where the suit ultimately goes. But it's done in such a mediocre manner that it will probably take multiple amendments and the judge educating them on Tennessee law to get it there. But fundamentally, what they're claiming is Candace, who said she fact-checked and this person was 100% honest, a lunatic. I mean, this dude is a loon. Well, this guy's been, every wife hates him. Every girlfriend hates him. Half of his kids hate him. I mean, he's a bottom barrel bum who cheats on people, defrauds people regularly, beats people up. The only reason he's not the main defendant is he's got no money. He made up a lunatic jackass story about the military being involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk, and that they met together and he happened to see it all. It was the most preposterous, ridiculous nonsense that only someone as dumb as Candace Owens could believe.
Now, all I have to say, I avoid making mistakes by having a pretty decent queue or radar of people. I don't watch all of Candace Owens' stuff.
You could smell bullshit from him before he even came on the TV. That's how bad this guy was.
I got bullshit radar up the wazoo, pun intended, when it came to Mitch Snow. What I want to highlight as just the ultimate hypocrisy by a lot of people out there is that everybody knows. I mean, Mitch Snow apparently was on Fort Huachuca the day of. I mean, that apparently seems to be documented. Everything else.
It's fake. He just made it up. You're a classic made up lunatic, and he has a history of making up lunatic stories.
You could have picked it out by listening to him in real time at the time. What the amazing thing is, this is the same guy that said that confirmed that Joe Kent was the source to Candace Owens. And so you have people out there in their frothing at the mouth rage to try to throw Joe Kent under the bus. By the way, still no formal confirmation of an investigation into him, and nobody has provided any evidence of any classified information he leaked to anybody. They rely on Mitch Snow saying that he was the source to Candace Owens, while they themselves say Mitch Snow is the idiot who made up the Fort Huachuca bullcrap story that embarrassed everybody who sat out there and repeated it. But now set that aside, defamation lawsuit. I agree that people are going to have the impression that Candace Owens is spreading a lot of conspiracy theories about Charlie Kirk, impugning or incriminating, suggesting, if not overtly stating, with respect to people closest to Charlie Kirk.
The main allegation here is that they allege that she gave an opinion that this individual conspired to cover up and participate in the murder of Charlie Kirk, as well as engaged at a minimum in criminal negligence. But she says the criminal negligence was deliberate and intentional and evidence of knowing participation in the murder of Charlie Kirk. And that is your classic form of libel.
The only problem
because it's an opinion that states facts, it's an opinion that states crime. Now, what they did for example, they have her lying about what he said about drone availability, lying about what he said about conversations with security officials, lying about what he said about medical availability, she's lying about what she claims he lied about. And one of her big problems is her obsessive tendency to say, this has been 100% fact check. This is a complete 100% honesty. This is not an opinion, everybody. This is a fact. That's a good way to get yourself sued into oblivion. So, what Candace has decided to do is torch her long-term credibility, give up any source of personal revenue for herself in the future, all in order to get short-term boosts. And you see Lionel Nation and these other people that are following right in her path, that are mimicking her because they're seeing the big boost in media support she's getting. But folks, she's an idiot. She's a complete idiot. I'm sorry, she's one of the dumbest human beings on the planet. She doesn't research jack. She lies all the time. She's lied about people for years. Now it just happens to be on this path. She used to lie about tons of other people over the years. She is 100% cooked, fried. Stick a fork in it, it's dead. In the case in Delaware, she is going to be ultimately 100% cooked. In this case, if Erica Kirk ever sues her, she'll be DOA again in that case. But what's the point? She's going to be broke 6 times over. But so it makes no sense for other people to keep suing her because it'll be a waste of space because of how many times she goes broke because she will not be able to defend herself in court to these proceedings because she's a hopeless habitual liar who makes up ridiculous, preposterous, asinine claims that makes all of you look like idiots for repeating the claims. And the very legitimate criticisms she has concerning President Trump, concerning the Iran war, concerning Israeli influence on the United States, gets sidetracked and marginalized by all of this insanity that she propagates.
I still disagree with you on the Brigitte Macron, and I will take a very large victory lap, Robert, if I end up being right on that. But
you can wager on it over at Kalshi. You can wager on whether. Remember, you can wager on whether Brigitte Macron will win her suit or not against Candace Owens.
Yeah, but then the problem is you end up locking in a bet for it'll be years.
You got to wait a while.
Yeah,
and probably by the time that it's close to making a decision, it'll be about 98% against Candace. But if you want to bet the bank and wait for a couple of years, folks, take it that Brigitte Macron will win that suit when it goes to trial.
Can we talk about the new TDS, Tucker derangement syndrome? It's wild. I mean, they're going after
completely.
Jonathan says, Barnes, every time I see you on X, it feels like the world is about to end. It is we are here. I remembered what I was trying to say the last time, Jonathan, and it was that we're here and you have no choice. You got to wage the battle, and there's no alternative. You got to wage the battle. So long as there's another day, there's another chance.
Speaking of stupid, did you see Elon Omar?
Yeah, the clip that was going around, they cut it right before she corrected herself and said World War II. But that is a next level of stupid, where those words World War 11 would have ever come out of your
World
mouth.
War 11. Think about how tough that war was. World War 11 was rough, man.
No, I think,
That was a brutal stuff.
The only other way to misread that by not knowing that when you're talking about deporting Japanese, Italian, and
What's a reminder?
German,
she ain't a real American.
But doesn't even understand like basic history. But like the only way to mispronounce that more would have been to say World War I.
She knows like how to chop up somebody, how to torture somebody. Her dad taught her that really well from their Somali death camp ways.
Well, hold on,
understanding.
Go on, Robert. I got the new technique now. Whenever I just want to back out a little bit, I'm just going to go like that. Right.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
All right, so we got it. Says Rep Ilhan Odor's number 11 is the new 2 + 2 = 5. I don't know why this person's vomiting blood. Let me see what's going on here. Woke up, realized after 40 years, especially U.S. has been lied to about Israel genocide, defined by the whips for mass murder, ethnic cleansing in Gaza and Lebanon. U.S. government is evil. USA now, it's the definition of genocide.
What they're doing in
Lebanon
is unbelievable to me. They're raising Christian villages to the ground. And
No,
then, the West Bank, they're chasing nuns down. It's like, does anybody have any sanity over there?
It doesn't make sense, and these are discussions that never they don't go in good. NetJust says Robert Viva on the board. Please consider this X proposal on Robert's desire to increase the House of Representatives. Like, repost, and follow.
We should have. I mean, the Constitution anticipated we would have one representative per maximum 30,000 Americans. We are way below that now. And that what does that do? That allows the donor class, because it costs so much money for anybody to run for the House, to control and completely control the House of Representatives. Whereas if they had a cap of 30,000 people they represented, then that allows the ordinary person to compete for votes without having to have a bunch of donor class support. So in my view, the failure to keep that part of our constitutional commitment to meaningful representation is one of the key problems with the House.
All good guy says, said it before, say it again. The 8 and the 6 being different colors specify 8 miles out, 6 feet deep in the context. Not to mention shells have a double meaning. It doesn't matter, man. It was obvious. So I noticed that as well. That was from All Good Guy. Thank you. So are most rhinos secretly in the closet, says their Ithaca 37 Cato?
Yeah, a fair number of them.
Chief James Homome. That was from Ithaca 37 Cato. Cousin Eddie says, Barnes, love all your takes except that the U.S. didn't have air supremacy over Iran. Well, I don't think that's what he's saying.
Well, I mean, air control. So you could say, what I mean is President Trump keeps saying they have no air defenses, and then our planes keep getting shot down, or our drones keep getting shot down.
Yeah, if we can't stop an attack from happening via air, we have air supremacy. Okay, Tim Adderholt.
He means supremacy as opposed to control. So that's
that's the thing. No,
but my point is, Trump says there's no air defenses, none. And that led to a pilot getting shot down and almost being held hostage and dying. So Trump lied, or Trump doesn't know he's telling a lie. But that's the problem.
Adderholt says, out, peace abroad, prosperity at home. In, piracy and conquest abroad, betrayal and division at home. Jonathan Toby says, if JD ends up not running for the White House in 2028, he can easily run for his old Senate seat. Sherrod Brown, he'll probably be out of politics if he doesn't run for president.
I think he's thinking about, he hasn't given up that ghost at all. That appetite will hang around.
Deputy Dano, says Bill Brown. Ithaca 37 Cato says, breaking news. Third-party candidate Charlie Sheen is planning his presidential Tiger Blood campaign. Is that true?
Winning.
Garvin 68. If Fauci's crimes were exposed, could he not be extradited and face justice in another country? That's a question I was asking.
Not only that. You know who else should be thinking about that? Donald Trump, Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Mike Davis, all these committee people that might think they're on pardon list. Folks, are they on pardon list for foreign countries? Probably not. Can you see a Democrat taking Trump and extraditing him to a foreign nation? I can see him doing it in a heartbeat.
Well, they
better all think about people thinking they got full protection because Trump has promised pardons to everybody. Ain't pardons if there's an international connection on a lot of these, like the Kazakh deal, like the crypto deals, like the Israeli drone company deal, like these big real estate foreign deals, like some of the Gaza deals, like some of the peace board deals. These deals involve foreign nations, and consequently, they could be indicted by those foreign nations. And Democrats will do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and we saw this with the president of the Philippines, where whatever happened.
They dragged him off for Serbia. They dragged him up to Brussels. So the people should think about that before they just go willy-nilly, thinking they got complete pardon protection no matter what they're doing.
Oh, we got People's Pundit in now. So let's break it down here. We got P. Vecchio says, thank you guys for coming to Larry Sharp's fundraiser. You both are true advocates for independent candidates, the best candidates.
Yeah, remember, if he gets on the ballot and wins enough votes, then a whole bunch of other libertarians can get on the ballot in 2028. And let's be honest, that's probably the only hope in a state like New York, because it ain't going to come from the Republican Party. And not New York, it ain't.
Lots of love from the People's Republic of New York. People's Pundit. Barnes is such a panican. Then again, the panicans are the only ones posting W and W. And he says, totally true. They ratified the 17th and underrepresented the House, giving rent seekers all the power. And Maydog said,
Bear studied that when he was in, I think, in college, which was that the 17th Amendment was used effectively not to give power to the people to control the Senate, but to give power to the donor class and the parasitic class and the rentier class instead. And now we see how inept and incompetent our House and Senate are. One of the most popular bills in the country, the SAVE Act, cannot get through. But one of the most unpopular bills, the FISA surveillance bill, somehow keeps getting through. I mean, it's such a joke. The corrupt rogue actors. And as Congresswoman Luna, Congresswoman Mace, Congresswoman Boebert, former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene have all been talking about, there's all kinds of sex scandals that are all hiding up there. They're harassing when they're not harassing the women, they're harassing the men. I mean, that's who these guys are. We got a lot of rogue bums. And unfortunately, there's as many on the Republican side as there are on the Democratic side. They're equal opportunity pedophiles and molesters and abusers.
Maydog says, just know this comes from a place of love, but once Robert gets going, he's like Cousin Eddie's Mississippi Leghound. It's better just to let him finish. And then funny. Leverett says, you pronounce it Huachuca. And by the way, People's Pundit is on peoplespundit.locals.com. And
he's got a big new detailed polling survey out. We're going to be shifting to a new time for What Are the Odds? We'll be on Mondays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Same time as Law for the People. So it'll be easier for people to keep up. Monday, 6 to 8. You can watch Viva 3 to 4. And then Richard and I will be on from 6 to 8. What are the odds? Monday, we're going to break down his latest polling data, what it says for the House, what it says for the Senate, what the Voting Rights Act may say for the House, what that aspect of it is, and basically predict it all as to what we see going forward and what we see if things do change or if they don't change. We'll get into some economic data as well, but it'll be a good breakdown. What are the odds? Monday, People's Pundit Daily, Locals, Rumble, and YouTube at X.
Now, Robert,
and Getter, and I think he's on Getter too.
Getter, that website always had a weird sounding name to it. Robert, speaking of people being sexual degenerates and total perverts and freaky deakies, you sent me this on Friday. I read it and said, "There's no
the JP Morgan suit."
No,
all
but
the
I said
and the nerds were running. They got all these memes. They're like, I can't wait to work for this woman after they saw this suit.
Okay, so, well, apparently the lawsuit that was filed under a John Doe had been what was it? It said withdrawn for correction. Is what I looked up when people said this has already been debunked. What you sent me, this was the original article. It says a JP Morgan executive accused of drugging, abusing male junior banker in lawsuit. Key allegations. You go into this, some of the stuff. It reads like. I want to say it reads like a bad porno, or at least what I recall being bad porno, like from back when, you had magazines and they had these stories that were the most absurdly written stories. Where did my article just go here? I got to get back. I see it in the backdrop. It's over here. I won't be able to get it. I'll have to read it to people. It says Doe claimed that, by the way, that's apparently the Doe that's been identified. Amuse put a response there. 37-year-old allegedly threatened the professional with retribution, telling him he wanted to be promoted to executive director. He would need to start pleasing her. She also reportedly subjected him to racial slurs using terms like brown boy, Arab boy toy. Another instance, the woman said, I fucking own you. I will make you pay. Do you think you're going to be in good standing if you do not have me in your corner? She allegedly said, you really think management wants some brown boy Indian leading originations? If you don't fuck my brains out tonight, I'm going to sabotage your promotion. So I'm reading this, Robert. I said, there's no way this is true. And
remember, and the best line, she said, does your Asian fish head wife have these cannons? Have
I
these
said-
cannons, and then apparently flash them.
Yeah. But apparently, Robert, apparently it's been debunked. I said, there's no way this is true. And then I thought I was being smart. And everyone's like, Viva, you idiot, you're 3 days late to the news. This is the latest. Which one is this here? I got it up here. So here you go. The guy who's been identified. Where is this from? What article? The Times of India. Irony says Sharana Rana was socially awkward. Lorna Hajidi, a top performer. No, hold on a second. Is this the one where they
So
they said it
the
was-
New
okay,
York
here we go.
Post said that it had been withdrawn at some point.
Yeah,
I think.
Rana's complaint was filed on Monday in New York County Supreme Court and contains an explosive allegations. It claims yada yada yada. However, the Daily Mail reported that parts of the court filing were later withdrawn for corrections, and J.B. Morgan has rejected all accusations. Obviously, they're going to reject all accusations. My understanding is it was pulled from the docket entirely, and the reason given was what they said here: corrections, important corrections. And so it hasn't been, as the last I could check, it hasn't been refiled. And some people were hypothesizing it was improperly filed under a John Doe when it ought not have been, or they're going to make corrections. Did I find out what the lawyer, if he was represented? I wanted to see who the law firm was.
Yeah, there was a law firm representing him. Yeah.
Yeah. So the bottom line is, thus far, it seems that the entire suit has been removed for corrections and has not yet been filed. To the extent he wasn't pro se, I would have a great difficulty believing there's any lawyer out there so stupid to file what reads like bad. What's it called when you have fan
It was
fiction
so bad it made you
porn?
think it might be true. But you see all the autists, like they had the autists running for the interviews. They had this autist.
I don't believe that.
Putting up a picture of her saying he didn't deserve you.
I don't believe that
The autists were having a field day with this case.
there's nobody, let alone a woman, who talks like that. Apparently, they didn't even work in the same department, or they weren't at the same of it. It looks like it was total bunk, but I don't know how you have a lawyer with a firm actually sign off on that and file it. Someone is going to be like, there's litigation privilege, and if this was total bullshit, if I'm that woman, I don't know what her name is.
There's not much you can do about it because the litigation privilege is complete.
Oh,
now, you could
God.
try to allege malicious prosecution, but you have to show no base for the suit. But what's even more, I mean, she's now featured in memes and AI all around the world. Everybody that's going to see her from now on is going to think,
No, that's why it's terrible. The damage is done.
can I work for you, honey? I'm ready to sign up.
Oh, your fish and wife with the, like, what I don't know who refers to cannons other than like it's like a Ron Burgundy type.
Yes, it is. It's a
what's
Ron Burgundy,
it's a Ron Burgundy version of-
1970s sketch taken into 2020s.
These cannons.
J.P. Morgan, no less.
And I think that guy's he's gonna have some problems because apparently, okay, so the news of the day, it was pulled from the docket for serious corrections and has not yet been refiled. Last I could check before going live earlier this evening. All right, Robert, what do we segue into from here?
Well, I mean, kind of a crazy the last of our indictments for this episode. Did you see the Narcos Mexico style indictment of some high-ranking political officials in Mexico, including the mayor it was a well-connected political figure, even to the current president. So it reads like Narcos style. Now, the timing of it has raised questions in Mexico. And the president has been deeply skeptical. And initially, they rejected the extradition request. Because basically, he's an old school leftist who got elected mayor of Sinaloa, which is the heart of the Sinaloa drug cartel. And about a couple of weeks ago, a couple of CIA guys fell off a road in Chihuahua near Sinaloa border. And people are like, how did that happen? Not long after there'd been a major raid on a lab. For anybody that's watched the Narcos series, including the Colombia one and the Mexican one, long-standing ties, or the documentaries produced related to it, long-standing ties between the CIA and the drug trade goes way, way back. It's as old as the CIA, because when the OSS became the CIA, one of the people they were already in bed with was Lucky Luciano, who they'd given control of Cuba in the French connection trade from Marseille over it. I mean, there's still rumors that some of those people were connected to the assassination of President Kennedy with the same agency. So one question was, what were these CIA guys even doing there? Because according to Mexican officials, they had no notice that CIA was there at all. They're like, hold on a second. What are CIA people doing here connected to drug trade or drug activities or drug raid activities? And all of a sudden, within a couple of weeks, there's suddenly an indictment that says, look away, everybody. And here's the giveaway where the indictment comes from. The indictment comes from the Sovereign District of New York. What does that have to do with Sonora? That should be Southern District of California, Southern District of Texas. A lot of other districts would make a lot more sense for the drug trade related to Sonora than the Sovereign District of New York. But whenever you want a deep state case, you bring it in the Sovereign District of New York. So the fact that they rushed it to cover, and I suspect to cover and hide the complicity and culpability of CIA officers going rogue and doing something they officially were not supposed to be doing, I think is what this whole case is about. President of Mexico has smelled a rat and says, we want to see the real evidence for this because the timing of this is very convenient. So we'll see. And it also could just be political. It could be a drug, siding with one drug group over another drug group. You can't rule that out. I seriously doubt it's about honesty and integrity in Mexico. This indictment is really driving for. Count me as skeptical of that. That some other story is likely being told. But we'll see whether this person is ever even extradited to New York. Or are we going to just start kidnapping people all around the world to bring them in for cases in the Maduro style? I don't think, frankly, we can rule that out these days. So it'll be a case to watch to see how it progresses going forward.
And now breaking news, I had to double check because I saw it come in by way of Raton on ComeyTube. Rudy Giuliani in hospital, critical but stable condition. According to X, prayers would be good. And I just don't, he's 81 years old. Not that changes anything. Brianna Morello is tweeting, reportedly to be critically ill but stable. I'm not sure how that works. We don't have any more information. Prayer for Giuliani. Well, with the amount of stress that they subjected that man to in the last few years of his life. That being said, once you hit 80, it's like that line from The Simpsons, each Matlock can be your last because the father time comes for all of us eventually. You just hope.
He had his own J.P. Morgan story, so that probably might have accelerated. There's certain activities, folks, once you get to a certain age, time to tamp down a little. Just saying. Be advice to the president when Laura Loomer's around. Just saying. But
hold on a second. Sorry, what did you say, Robert?
Exactly. Speaking of the force of the Iran war that's causing a lot of the political controversy surrounding the president currently, we have two different distinct legal disputes and controversies. One is how is force majeure going to be adjudicated? And that's a phrase that people kind of have some familiarity, but the average person is like, what does that even mean? What does that entail? There's going to be complicated international arbitrations, international litigation regarding this. The scope of people claiming it is expanding and extending. So what does force majeure mean? What does it mean in the Iran war context? And the other one is the War Powers Resolution Act. Is the president acting consistent with it or inconsistent with it? Because he made a claim that he was acting consistent with it. We can evaluate that, which requires some reference to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty as to whether something was or wasn't an imminent risk. So but either way, you want to start with the force majeure or the War Powers Resolution Act?
Let's do the force. Let's do the force majeure, which is.
Have you ever done one of those?
I mean, force majeure is it's literally French for, it's act of God is the way they explain it, but it's something that's beyond the control of the contracting parties. And so you include.
So does it mean like force major? What does majeure mean?
Majeure means, it means beyond the control of human, basically. And so, I think it's the equivalent. It's the translation of act of God, which doesn't necessarily just have to do with act of God, but typically even force majeure excludes things like war, riot, civil uprising, and in some places earthquakes. That's a joke. But so the bottom line here is that there's going to be a lot of shipments of oils and other things. I mean, let's just say with oil that are going to be delayed, if not unfulfilled. And then the question is going to be who's going to be contractually bound either to pay for it or to not pay, absolved from paying for it. If there's delays, who's going to be responsible for the? I read somewhere that like for each hour a flight is delayed, it's like some hundreds of thousands of dollars in aggregate costs. And so now you're dealing with shipments of oil across the world. Set aside the humanitarian impact that this might have in terms of starvation and whatever. There's going to be the issues as to contractual liability and who assumes the losses here. And I haven't actually seen any actual pending litigation or impending litigation, but the concern is that there's going to be a lot of force majeure being claimed. This was beyond our control, and so whoever was obliged to ship and can't do it anymore is absolved, and then whoever's was expecting the purchase is not going to be able to hold them liable for this. And then the question is going to be, how does the U.S. intervention fit in, and whether or not it qualifies as force majeure. I mean, I never did. The firm I started at had an amazing maritime department. It was BLG. I never did it. It's I mean, dry as crackers, except now it's going to be a very lucrative practice because there's going to be a whole hell of a lot of this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how it's going to be adjudicated, who's responsible, who has to pay, who has to assume the costs, and whether or not war is going to be even covered under these contracts as force majeure.
Yeah, exactly. So you got so the first group that was claiming force majeure related to the Iran war were providers of the actual products themselves out of the region. So, crude oil, natural gas, derivatives like petrochemicals that go into precursors for plastics and other things, aluminum, helium, urea, certain fertilizers that go into that are critical for the food supply. Those are the first ones where the suppliers to start declaring force majeure, often the governments themselves. What's unique here is you'll have like the wealth fund or something that manages it, but even though it's co-owned by the government effectively, and then the government declaring you can't produce anymore, and then them saying because the government's declared it, we now have force majeure. So that's kind of, how all that's going to work. That's the first group claiming it. The second group claiming it are shipping companies, logistical companies, trading markets. They're starting to say, look, we can't get stuff out. We can't get insured. We can't get, we got a breakdown in the whole supply chain. So as that breakdown in the supply chain, now we can't deliver. We can't go into the Straits of Hormuz because it's blocked. The president says he's going to escort ships in tonight. I'm a little skeptical of whether he really means that or not. We'll find out because of the consequences it might trigger. We'll see about that too. But they're claiming force majeure. The other group claiming force majeure are the manufacturers, the refiners, the producers who have lost input goods. You're going to have farmers. You got a huge surge in farming bankruptcies around the world, but including the United States, because they're over 70% of farmers saying we don't have enough fertilizers to be able to even plant. So you're looking at famine risk around the world, especially in the global south, but not limited or constricted to it because they don't have critical input goods. If you're a farmer in the United States, you just got doubly whacked. You either don't have or fertilizer cost has gone through the roof, and your fuel, diesel especially for farmers, diesel costs are going through the roof. And this is happening at a time you're already being squeezed by the big corporate cartel monopolists. So you're getting hit from every single angle. And that's why you're seeing a surge in farmer bankruptcy claims. Trump administration's got to jump on this fast, or we're going to have a lot of farmers get hammered.
I'm just
But part of their stuff is inputs. They don't have inputs. Can they claim force majeure? No, I can't deliver those 200 cattle because I didn't get the fertilizer to go into the stock feed, and I can't afford the diesel anymore. So the other is which legal standard decides. Is it local law? Is it foreign law? Is it an arbitration? Is it an international arbitration? Who's going to decide? Is it going to be a jury? Is it going to be a judge? Is it going to be an arbitrator? Is it going to be somebody from a particular country or some group of countries? Most of these complicated international disputes are international arbitration panels. And then which substantive law do they apply? Do they apply, say, the law of New York? Do they apply to the law of the UK? Do they apply to the law of Texas? Do they apply the law of, say, Dubai? That created law that was meant to mirror and mimic in many respects the laws from London that is the common law of England, which is broadly accepted in the United States. For example, in New York, very strict requirements before you can declare force majeure. In Texas, a little bit less so. Under the English tradition, I think this makes the most sense for force majeure. Is this event, number one, outside of their control? Number two, did it cause the problem that they're claiming it caused in preventing performance? Then third, you consider it a legitimate legal excuse if punishing them would effectively rewrite the benefit of the bargain beyond that which no one would agree to. Now, risk allocation is supposed to agree to in the contract. Issues like insurability are often written out. Remember, we saw this during COVID. A whole bunch of people for force majeure were shut down and their insurance companies refused to pay. A bunch of other people had said, no, that doesn't count because we had excluded it this way or excluded it that way. So can a bunch of people just get screwed and have no legal relief or remedy, be held accountable to something they literally can't deliver on? It'll depend on what their contract says and which jurisdiction laws apply and who decides.
I'm just looking to see. I can't find any specific examples if war is included or excluded from these specific transportation provisions, but there's some places that were saying like even if war is excluded, then it's going to be a question of is this a war if it hasn't been declared a war? Is it a government interference, which was separate from war? This was back in 9/11 when each tower was covered for an act of terrorism, and then the question became whether or not both planes going to both towers was one act of terrorism or two separate acts of terrorism. I think they ended up determining it to be two separate acts, which was a $4 billion
he got
windfall.
a big check written for all
I was
those
gonna
things
say,
falling down.
multi-billion-dollar
There's been a
windfall.
lot of rumors about him ever since. How much he profited from it. The owner of the towers, but so you're going to have all kinds of interesting force. This will be like the ultimate version of force majeure because of all the knock-on effects. Because this will be the largest energy shock in world history. World history. That's how bad this is. That's how significant, economically consequential it is. And then you have the fertilizers, then you have the aluminum, then you have the helium. You have all these things that go into the supply chain that are critical inputs. Then you have its impact on whole industries that then have its own knock-on effects to the shipping industry, transport industry, insurance industry. What happens if the insurance industry just can't insure a bunch of people or goes bust? How many insurance companies have ties to various markets and market funds? So then all of a sudden it starts impacting currencies. It starts impacting equity markets, starts impacting bond markets. So everybody's waiting to see all the legal ramifications of the economic implications from the Iran war, because much of it has no precedent at this scale.
It's amazing. Like I'm just checking things in real time, but that typically, I was double checking myself. Reality, the myth. I mean, this is from whatever website. This is Greco Myths. Standard marine insurance already covers war. Reality under institute cargo clauses. Yada yada yada. War, civil rebellion, insurrection, hostile acts are typically excluded. War risk protection normally requires a separate war clause. No, it's gonna be. What did I just do here? Well, the litigation aside, I mean, Robert, can they just declare victory? Come back and mitigate.
Well, speaking of that, there we get the War Powers Resolution Act. The president sent a letter saying that he's complied with it completely. For those that don't know, it's Public Law 930148, passed in November of 1973 over the veto of President Richard Nixon, which was an attempt to codify the constitutional requirement. The Constitution makes the president the commander-in-chief of all armed forces, but explicitly says the power to declare war lies exclusively with the legislative branch. So they decided to try to create a codified mechanism of how is this going to work. And so the War Powers Resolution Act was an attempt to interpret and enforce the Constitution and provide some clarity of direction. So what it requires is if there's been the introduction of armed forces into a situation where imminent involvement is indicated. So you don't have to have ongoing kinetic conflict. You just need introduction of armed forces. It includes use of naval assets. Historically, a blockade is a declaration of war under normal standards of legal interpretation, customary legal interpretation. If the president, if he does that, if he introduces armed forces into any such situation where they may be imminently called into action, then he can only do so if he has the approval and authorization of Congress by a specific statute, if Congress has already declared war related to the introduction of those armed forces, or if they're at imminent risk and have already been attacked, and the self-defense necessity and proportionality of self-defense comes into play. So the president has asserted he's never been super clear on his what justified this from the beginning. Because one minute it's, hey, no week they can't have a nuke, but the next minute is Haig's death testified this week. We obliterated their nuclear program. And it's like, well, if we obliterated it, how was that the basis of imminent risk of attack that required us to attack within the principles of proportionality and necessity that are applicable to self-defense? So there's issues there. But let's putting all that aside. It's been 60 days since he introduced these forces for imminent attack. So how does he, under the War Powers Resolution Act, he can't keep them? In other words, he can use imminent self-defense to put them into harm's way for 60 days, but can't keep them there after 60 days, unless there is a declaration of war or specific statutory authorization. So why are they still there? Why are we sending more there? Well, according to the president, it's all over. War's all over. And there might be, as soon as there's a ceasefire, that ends the war. That ends the Connecticut conflict. And now the War Powers Resolution Act clock starts all over again. There's no reasonable interpretation of the statute that supports the president's interpretation. Now, people can point out presidents have been ignoring the War Powers Resolution Act ever since it was passed, and it's an absolutely fair criticism but that's a precedent of rogue action that is not the kind of precedent and a believer in the rule of law, says we should recognize or respect or hold in high regard. But that's really kind of the only defense, because, again, the law is about the introduction of such forces. And otherwise, the law says, quote, he shall terminate the presence of those forces. Shall terminate once the 60 days is gone. The 60 days is gone. That means he's got to withdraw them. He's not withdrawing them by pretending that the clock starts all over again whenever he decides it starts all over again, as long as he has a ceasefire along the way. Under the president's interpretation, he could keep doing war for forever, as long as for at least a minute of some day in that process, he declares a ceasefire, which, by the way, is not what the War Powers Resolution Act says. It says introduction of forces with the risk of imminent kinetic conflict. So I don't think the president has a defense under the War Powers Resolution Act. Practically, there's nothing that can be done about it other than potential future impeachment risk that he faces. It's unlikely he's going to face any real legal exposure in the near short term from it. But I don't think it's a well-advised path to pursue, because there's a reason we want Congress involved in this process. The reason our founders chose Congress to be involved in this process. We want more than one person to be in a position of power before our boys can be committed and put into harm's way. And this conflict proves 100 reasons and better why that should be and is the case. But that's the short summation of the War Powers Resolution Act and its application to this context.
All right, and now we got to take the party over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com and Rumble Premium. Robert, what do you have coming up this week?
So Monday, we'll be on with Richard Barris, People's Pundit Daily, from 6 to 8 p.m. What are the odds? Breaking down all the implications of the Voting Rights Act for the members of Congress in 2026, breaking down all the House and Senate key races in 2026, looking at the latest data from Richard Barris's poll and survey, which includes an economic forecast. We have other economic data, but we'll go over all the information, all the data, what that data may mean and indicate for the various prediction markets and political predictions and forecasts that are out there. But that'll be from 6-8 on Monday night. Then we'll be on with Bourbon with Barnes Tuesday night, 9-ish Eastern time at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Again on Wednesday night and again on Thursday night. And then Friday we'll have a Barnes Brief, which has a bunch of content and curated links in it. And then Saturday night, movie night, where we'll figure out a cool, fun movie to watch with the live chat open. And for the after party here, either at vivabarneslaw.locals.com or for Rumble Premium subscribers, we have what is in and out of the Farm Bill, OpenAI on trial with Elon Musk, and Google gets caught again. But now they have to do real remedies and reforms for the first time in forever. And I think there was one more case.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Oh, yeah, we got Montana Sanctuary Attorney General taken over by the Sanctuary District Attorney, taken over by the Attorney General's office. How that happened in the state of Montana, which is its own dynamic. And do illegals get bail? That'll be the 5 bonus topics over at vivabarneslaw.locals.com or Rumble Premium members.
We are going to go raid whatever. It was either whatever or Rampage Jackson, who seems to be live in Mexico. But I think the debate with
is his son still being prosecuted?
I think so. I'm trying to get an interview with Jackson Rampage, but should we do Rampage? Should we raid Rampage? You want a debate between what do they call them, OnlyFans girls or Rampage in Mexico? I will go raid the debate. Go raid. If you want to opt out now. But it's whatever, and it's on the. It looks like there's a debate, and it looks like it's fun. I don't know if it's going to be quite the level of meaningful debate, but go check it out. And let me just read a couple more of the Rumble rants before we take this party on over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Stephen Lynn Wolf, Atlanta, says, please read the Substack America Cares Act solves U.S. debt, immigration, childcare, homelessness, criminal recidivism, and fraud in SS, Medicare, Medicaid, and NGOs. Read it and share to Donald John Trump. And he's messaged this a couple times. I hope you meant to do it 4 times. But thank you. And we're going to get the leftover tips over on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We've raided. Let me just go indicate in the chat, and we'll say Viva Raid Booyah. All right. And we'll get going on the other topics. So I'll be live daily, 3 o'clock. I felt something was new this week that I wanted to announce. I forget what it is, but it's nothing. We're going to go live now.
There are still tickets available at 1776 Law Center for the annual convention of celebrating the quarter century anniversary of America's independence. That'll be in Chattanooga, Tennessee, August 1st and August 2nd. Alexander McCorus, Alex Christoforou, Daniel Davis, Larry Johnson, Richard Barris, the one and only Viva Fry, myself, a bunch of other guests, maybe some big surprise guests, but limited tickets available. But you can get them over at 1776lawcenter.com. All net proceeds go to support 1776 Law Center, which supports food freedom, medical freedom, political freedom, and financial freedom. People like whistleblowers against the government, people like the Amish farmer Amos Miller and other Amish farmers against the government, people fighting COVID vaccine mandates, people fighting on the front lines of a wide range of freedom cases and causes. Over at 1776lawcenter.com. Get tickets while you can, because we got a hard cap.
All right, amazing. And now we are going to go update and to Rumble Premium, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Everyone else, the full audio will be on podcast tomorrow morning, maybe tonight if I remember to do it before falling asleep. And we're going to snip and clip and put the clips up on social media. So that is it. Updating for the rest of us. Everyone else on Rumble, enjoy the raid and see you all tomorrow.